There go the notifications, hopefully. I really should get something to drink because there's going to be a lot of reading. I need to get to... Hello, if you're here. If you're not here, then you can't hear me say hello. All right, let me see. Go to... Okay, so everybody wanted to go, well, no, that I shouldn't say that. That's like saying when Lisa said everyone loves soup, and everyone obviously doesn't love soup. There's people that don't love soup, just like, what did I say the other day? Everybody doesn't like chocolate chip mint, thin mint cookies. And then we found out that Lisa H never even tried chocolate chip mint ice cream. So, you feel like you should fix yourself? Fix myself for what? What do you have to fix yourself for? Hi, everybody. Oh, thanks, Pudding. These are these 50-cent shirts that they had. Isn't that crazy? All right. Hi, Tech Turtle Gum. Hi, Vintage Gal, and everybody. Aurora, Tracy, Robotibulb, Larky, Dandy, Sharon. So a lot of you, let me just do that. A good percentage of you. What did you have to fix yourself about? I don't know. You don't have to fix yourself. You're perfect the way you are. Wanted to go into this Jodi Arias case. Now, in the members, like last night, we started reading Juan Martinez's book. Okay? And you might want to join us next time. We went through 3 chapters in that book, and then in the Patreon, we are reading this book, The Killer Across the Table, and we're through chapter 5 of this one. So, next time, join us. But right now, we're going to go through some of the testimony right from the real. We're going to go over it because it's just of her on the stand. You may be watching the trial, but let's take a look at this a little bit, and then we can discuss it, because some of you don't know this case. Now, if you don't know this case, just a brief synopsis of it is 2 people meet. One's a Mormon, Travis Alexander, and he has a prepaid legal business, okay, which is like an MLM type legal business. And he meets this woman, Jodi Arias, who is totally wrong for him in every way. And the biggest way is she's not even a Mormon, and he's trying to stay on track, right? So anyway, they end up hooking up, and she is stalkerish. She is extremely jealous. She sneaks in his house through a dog door. She hides when he's with other women there. And women that he keeps, it's platonic and stuff, but she's always following him around. She has made, like, all of his friends say there's something wrong with this girl, but he can't quit her. I can't quit you. I can't quit you. Because she is using everything to entice him, all the stuff he's not supposed to be around and into, and he never considered her, wife material, let's put it that way. He knew what he was doing was wrong, but couldn't resist the temptation. Anyway, they broke up, and when they broke up, she moved from California, where she lived, back to Mesa, and started to run into him again. He had a trip coming to Mexico, which he was supposed to go with her on, but then he asked another girl, and that seemed to be the catalyst that really drove her to do what she did. So she drove to his house and they had sex. He took a shower. Supposedly she was taking pictures of him. And the next thing you know, he stabbed 27 to 29 times. He's shot in the head. And he has his neck slit ear to ear. She cleans up as best she can. She can't get the blood out of the carpet and stuff. But she takes sheets and things and puts them in the washing machine. She even cleans up downstairs. She deletes all the pictures of the camera that even took a picture of her dragging him down the hall. She puts it in the washing machine with the card in it, which I'll never understand. And puts bleach in it, turns it on, and leaves and starts driving back. And she's even stopped on the way back because she had turned the license plates of the rental car upside down so they wouldn't be easily read. Cop doesn't even notice anything crazy about it. Then the lead detective on the case, after he's discovered 5 days, after he's been there for 5 days in the shower where she dragged him back, he's discovered, and everyone's saying, you've got to interview this ex-girlfriend. She's crazy. You got to interview this ex-girlfriend. She's nuts. Meanwhile, she's calling Detective Flores and asking about what's happening and if she could do anything, and she's so upset. And she probably couldn't be placed at the crime scene, except that they were able to recover the pictures. And when they did so, they could place her at the crime scene. They got a leg of her pants in there. They saw her. And then there was a handprint on the wall. So, yeah. She was arrested in July. And then this trial took forever to go to trial. So today we're going to talk about her testimony on the stand. Now, her interviews are crazy, too. And I want to go through those, too. But let me just see one second about which one I want to do. I might as well have to do... can you guys hear me? Slashed his tires twice. She slashed his tires. She slashed his tires twice. A knock at the door. They went out. They didn't see anything. The next day, the tires were slashed. And then, a few days later, after he had all the tires fixed or replaced, she did knock on the door, and all the tires were slashed again. Twice. The tires were slashed. You were 20 miles away in Gilbert at the time. Shocking. Yeah, and she did convert to Mormonism. He actually baptized her, but that didn't make a lot of hi pudding. Hi, everybody. Hi, Mary Beth. Kevin Leonard. Debbie L. Everybody. Amy Celeste. Meeser Mom. You know the case well? Yeah. I know it very well, too, but a lot of people here didn't, and now they're starting to get into this case. And let's see. Isabel. Who's all dolled up? Me? I'm not dolled up at all. My gosh, I didn't even color my hair. Who's that? Aurora Rodriguez, Deidre. Hey, Deidre Realtor. 50, yes, they were 50 cents. I told you guys this. There was a package of two together, two different colors. I want to say Pottery Barn. Why do I say Pottery Barn? Prairie Woman. No, that's what Lisa calls her. What's her name? What's her name? Not Prairie Woman. That's what Lisa calls her. What is her name? Oh my gosh, now I'm calling her Prairie Woman like Lisa. What is her name? Oh my, Pioneer Woman. Prairie Woman. 2 shirts, okay? And it said $15 on the sign for 2 shirts. And I'm thinking like, I want those. All right, $15. That's not bad. $7.50 a shirt. All right. So I picked out, I think, 2 packages of them, okay? Go up to the register. I run them through. They say $1. I'm like, wait a minute. That has to be a mistake. $1? I take the other package. I put it through the scanner. $1. And the store was closing at this time, okay? Jimmy we have 2 carts to still ring through. So I go like this to him. Oh my gosh, look at this. And he goes, $1. I ran back and I got every color. Sometimes I even duplicated colors that I like black and red and green, and $1. So they came to 50 cents a shirt. I wanted to go throw the whole display in, but I'm like, I didn't do it. I didn't go back the next day because I'm a minimalist. But no, and the thing is about them, they're really nice. They're like, they even feel like a wicking material kind of, and they're very comfortable. They wash really nice, dry really nice. 50 cents a shirt. My gosh, come on. Okay. So let me go. I think it was a clearance, Nicole, because you know why? There's like clearance groups, and you could see that people were selling them on eBay and stuff, and that means that they're also getting them from $1 and stuff. So I think sometimes they're just getting rid of a lot of stuff. And you know what? Somebody said last night that a lot of the stores didn't get a lot of their Christmas stuff in on time, and they're getting it in now, and it's going immediately to 75% off. So who said something? Look at Hobby Lobby, they said, or Michael's, and that's what Mama Aim said. It's already at 75%. Hi, Rebecca. Okay, so let's go into this. Hi, Texas Warrior, check, and everybody, Rosalita. Anybody I missed, I'll get you later. All right, so let me go over here. I just want to see if there's the... Okay. Okay, so these are, what are these? Secret testimony. So this is, when was this released? So back in 2015, transcripts of Jodi Arias' closed-door testimony during her sentencing retrial were released. At that time, it was a really big deal. She was convicted in 2013, but a jury was unable to decide whether she should be sentenced to death or life in prison. Then a new jury had to be impaneled in September to decide her fate. Controversy arose after the judge closed the courtroom to the press and the public for the testimony of an unidentified witness. The courtroom closure came after the defense argued that the skittish defense witnesses should be allowed to testify in secret. Jodi Arias testified for 2 days in secret before the Arizona Court of Appeals ruled that the media should have access to the courtroom and to transcripts of her testimony. In total, the transcripts are over 200 pages, but they start out with a bang. After stating her name, she testifies that she killed Travis Alexander, her boyfriend, in 2008, but didn't admit to killing until 2 years later because what she did was so horrific that I couldn't have. I could not have imagined myself doing that to another human being. Arias also admitted that she tried to conceal the murder in part by playing the role of a grieving girlfriend. I knew that by not showing up, it would look more suspicious. She testified about attending Travis Alexander's memorial. I showed up and tried to act as normal as I could. Okay, so this, we have some secret testimony, and we can read that. That's one of the things we're going to read too. And hold on. When Okay. So let me go over here and get these witnesses, transcripts. Okay. What was that? Did you hear that? They don't have my... Alright, I wanted to go with... Let me see here. Witnesses, appeal fund, her testimony, her diary. Anyway, we can go over I just want to go over this, and let me just go over what I have, and then there's so much to go on in this case, we're not going to run out. So where's my testimony here? That's not that one, it's this one. Okay, so this is, let's see what date this is from. This is November 3rd, 2014. This is so funny because that is my father's birthday, and she killed him on my birthday, June 4th, 2008. So this is right from the reporter's transcripts of the proceedings that was taken commencing at 10:30 a.m. at the Superior Court, Maricopa County, for the plaintiff, Deputy County Attorney, Mr. Juan Martinez, for the defendant, Mr. Kirk Nurmi, and Ms. Jennifer Wilmot. The court on record, the court will show the presence of the defendant and all counsel. There was an oral argument on the motion to stay. Counsel, do you have anything to report? And then let's get Jodi on the stand here. So they say, Ms. Arias, you're still under oath. Do you understand that? Yes, she says. This is her attorney saying, thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Ms. Arias. She says, good afternoon. She says, when we stopped last week, we were talking about your house that you bought with Daryl Brewer in Palm Desert. Do you remember that? Yes. Now, Daryl Brewer is the older guy she was with. So her attorney says, we had looked at some of the pictures of you and Mr. Brewer, showing you exhibit number 644. Is that a picture of you and Mr. Brewer and his son? Jodi says, yes. During this time when you lived in Palm Desert, what was the living arrangement? She says, in Palm Desert, we brought a three-bedroom, 2-bath home. I had my own room. Daryl had his own room, and Jack had his own room. But you were romantically involved with Mr. Brewer? Jodi says, we were involved. We just went to our own rooms, our own space. We usually fell asleep at the same time, but we had our own rooms, if that makes sense. Your own space? Right, she says. One of the things that we talked about a little bit was your interest in photography. Do you remember that? Yes, says Jodi. Tell us a little bit more. Did your interest in photography ever blossom into something as an adult? Jodi says, yes, after I moved to Palm Desert, I upgraded. I went to digital. I got nicer equipment, and I had done a wedding in the past. That was something I continued with that. I began to do portraits, weddings, landscapes, everything like that. All right, and one of your other interests from back when you were a child, you talked about a little bit about art, right? Right. And what about writing? Writing was also an interest of mine from the time I was very young. And how did that become an interest of yours? She said, when I was 8 years old, I was at the mall with my mom, and we went into a Hallmark, and I saw this journal, and on the front it had a cat that just looked like my cat at the time. And I asked her for it, and she got it for me, so I just began to write. I started journaling when I was 8. And did you notice at that time things in particular that you would journal about? Well, just my life, my siblings, my mom. If my mom and I had a fight, I would write about that and get it out onto the page, and that would help me process it. Like when my older sister became pregnant, I was excited. I wrote about things going on there. And did you journal every day from age 8 up until you were arrested? Well, there were periods, a few years here or there, that I wasn't consistent about it, but I think mostly from age 8 fairly regularly through high school, a little bit in my upper 20s, and more regularly, again, when I was 27 on. Okay, all right. So we're talking about in Palm Desert, were you working? Yes. And what kind of work were you continuing to do? Restaurants. Okay, she approaches they'd show an exhibit. Is this a picture taken at one of the restaurants that you worked at? Jodi says it was actually taken at a restaurant we went to after work. I think it was the Yard House. And then she says, Mr. Martinez says that they're having a... Hold on a minute. She says, at the time you were living in Palm Desert, what year was that? She said, I had lived there between 2005 and 2006 and part of 2007. Okay, and at the time that picture in Exhibit 693 was taken, is that during one of these years? Yes. I'm going to see something if I can get... trying to say that, but right now. Okay, but I'll put her on for a little bit so you can get the jury exhibits. Okay. At the time of this picture, is that during one of those years? Yes. Is this picture of you and some of the people that you knew when you were working in Palm Desert? She says, right, those are my co-workers. At some time where you were living in Palm Desert, did something happen with the housing market? She says, yeah, it imploded. And so how did that affect you? It did. How did it affect you? Well, our house became worthless for what we paid for it. Our mortgage index had jumped up. It jumped up $600 more per month. We didn't read the fine print before signing very well, I guess. Well, we actually swapped on the... And Jodi, were you able to continue paying the mortgage for some time? For a little bit, but then eventually it became too much to pay. How did you continue paying the mortgage? I started paying with my credit cards. Did you ever have more than one job in Palm Desert? Yes. One job at a time, I mean? I usually had 2 jobs at a time. Sometimes there was one at a time, but I typically needed 2 jobs at a time. And was that in part to help pay for the mortgage? Yes. In the beginning of 2006, was there ever another financial opportunity that presented itself to you? Yes. Tell us what happened. I was at work and a coworker asked when I planned to retire, and I said someday, and he said, I'm retiring in 5 years. He was about my age, so it was kind of a bold statement, I thought. And so he gave me information about a company called Prepaid Legal and said that it's a great opportunity to make a lot of money, passive income. And at that point in time, did you know what Prepaid Legal was? No. Did you end up signing up for Prepaid Legal? Eventually, yes. And when was that in comparison to the time that you first spoke to this person? Oh, it was roughly 6 months later, several months later. I don't remember exactly how many. And how is it that you signed up for Prepaid Legal? I was cleaning out a closet. I had the information that he had given me. I wanted to throw it away because I didn't want it. But before I threw it away, I wanted to know what was on the DVD he gave me. So I popped the DVD in the DVD player and I watched it. And I liked what I saw, so I decided to pursue it. And what you saw, was that an explanation of the type of money people can make working for Prepaid Legal? Yes. Can you explain to us briefly what Prepaid Legal is or was? Yeah, it's now called Legal Shield to my understanding. The company they market legal services. It's much like legal insurance where you pay a monthly fee and you have attorneys on call as far as advice and things like that. And how is it that you're signing up to work with Prepaid Legal? How is it that someone like you could make money from that? Okay, well, I sign up. The person who signs me up makes a commission, an advance commission, so you can sign up just for the service. But if you want to do it to make money, you can become an associate and sign up other people and make an advance commission off their memberships, and those people become associates. They sign up others. The advance commission trickles up, so you continue to make residual income based on how many people you continue to sign. And at this time, are we talking when you first learned about Prepaid Legal? What timeline are you talking about? I think this would have been late 2005, kind of around the time I first heard about it, not when I signed up. When is it that you signed up? I believe it was in March of 2006. And how did you sign up? How do you do that? Well, I called the 800 number that was on the little label on the DVD. That's the guy who gave it to me. He wasn't doing the business anymore, so he said he would refer me to his upline, which is the guy who signed him up. And so I called him. He wasn't doing the business anymore, so I couldn't get any information. He never did. So finally, I looked online to see if anyone had any information, and that he met, which is in the same area of Palm Desert, called me back. Did you ever get suspicious that the people who told you that they were going to retire and he's not doing it anymore, and then his upline isn't doing it anymore, did that ever cause you any suspicion? Yeah, it was a little bit. I wouldn't say suspicion, it just made me wonder, but I was going off the information in the DVD rather than these people, and I could see just by the DVD that it's something that requires diligence, so I assumed that. And with the DVD and things that were contained on the DVD, was it somewhat motivational? Yeah, it was positive. Now at this time in your life, are you still involved with Mr. Brewer? Yeah. Yes. Are you still living together? Yes. And we discussed your financial situation. Was it getting any better? No, it was not. So, after you signed up, did you become involved right away? No. I signed up, I was given the materials. I really didn't do anything with it for a while. At some point, did you become involved? Yes. When is that? Let's see. If I would have signed up in March, there's an international convention in September, which was at the time being held in Las Vegas. So the lady who signed me up, she called me, I think around June or July, and urged me to go. She had wanted me to go to another part of that, but I had a wedding booked, so I didn't go. But I went to the convention, and that's when I became more involved, a little bit more. And let's take a step back for a second. When you talk about conventions, what is it that, and other events, what kind of event did PPL or Prepaid Legal have? Okay, yeah. The event that occurred in July that she invited me to was just one. It was a smaller event. I don't know if you're familiar with network marketing companies. They have different organizations within the company where, if you recruit a lot of the people, that becomes sort of your team. And so this was a team retreat. The team I ended up being recruited into was called Team Renew, and it was a retreat that occurred at Daniel Summit's house near Park City. And they just go there and went to a lodge and just hung out. Is that the retreat you're talking about? When was that? That, I believe that year was in July. Okay, is that who signed you up? Do you remember the person's name? Her name was Michelle. And did she want you to go to the Daniel Summit retreat? Yes. Did you end up going to that? No, I went to the wedding. You went to a wedding? Yeah. And when you go to these retreats or conventions, who is paying for you to go? We pay our own way. And so throughout the year, does Prepaid Legal have different functions that everyone gathers at? Yeah, usually monthly. It's a regional, weekly. It's more of like a citywide event, and then yearly it's international. There are people from Canada. Last time I was involved, there were provinces from Canada and all 50 states that offered this type of service, so the whole organization is invited. And have you heard the term Super Saturday? Yes. What is that? That's one of the regional events that occur monthly, where it's kind of like a training/recruiting event where you bring a guest and they teach you more about the company and that sort. And at these events, did you get an idea what the general goal is for these events? What does it do for the employees or the associates? It kind of it heightened morale. It makes you kind of re-injects you with like a sense of excitement for the company. Usually the speaker is somebody that has had success in the company, so it helps you to see that they give their background, where they came from, so it helps you to see, basically anyone from any walk of life can come into the company and stick with the system they have and have success. That's what we're told. When you leave these conventions or retreats, did you leave with an impression? Right. Usually you left with an impression that it takes work, but it's something that you can do to make money and fulfill your dreams. All right. So what's the first convention that you went to? The first convention I went to was in September of 2006. And in September of 2006, are you still living with Mr. Brewer? Yes. Are you still involved with his son? Yes, actually at that point he had moved back to be with his son. His son? Right. Did you not see him as much? Not as much. Jodi, I am showing Exhibit 697. Do you recognize that? Yes. Is this a picture of your family? Yes, my siblings. Your siblings? Was this taken sometime in 2005? That was objected to for leading. So, all right, you said this is a picture of your siblings. Is that right? Right. Can you name them for us? Yeah. On the far left is Angela. The younger one is Joseph, my brother Carl, and myself. And you're the oldest of this group? Right. And you said that this was sometime in 2005? Yes. And is this when you were in Palm Desert? That actually was taken in Eureka. Right. But you were living in Palm Desert. I was living in Palm Desert at the time. All right. So the first convention that you go to, how does that happen that you decide to go? Michelle was very adamant that I go, and she talked it up about how exciting it was going to be, so I went. Where was it? In Los Angeles at the MGM Grand. And how is it that you got there? Michelle and I and Lenore, we all carpooled. I'm sorry, Michelle, you and Lenore, a woman that we carpooled in Michelle's car. Were they from the same area that you were? Yes, Lenore and Michelle, I believe, lived in Hemet. I know Michelle lived near Palm Desert. It's the same county. Actually, I don't know. It's very close. All right. And so did you drive together? Is that what you mean by carpool? Right. And how long did this convention last? The convention lasted, the actual convention part lasts 2 days. It's Friday and Saturday, and on Thursday night there's also an event. Okay, and when did you all go? She and I, the three of us, we drove like starting Wednesday and got there Wednesday evening. You got there Wednesday evening? Right. And what kind of things were you doing on Wednesday evening? Oh, we're just hanging out. We walked by the pool, and there were a lot of people there that Michelle knew, and we were introduced to tons of people. We were in the lobby. We went to dinner at the Rainforest Cafe. We checked in, that sort of thing. When you say there were a lot of people, can you give us an idea of how many people generally attended these conventions? Yeah, my understanding is between 12 and 16,000 people come for the event. I'm sorry, Jodi, 12 and 16,000? Yes. And so was Michelle taking you around and introducing you to a bunch of different people? Right. You said you had dinner at the Rainforest Cafe? Yes. Where is that? It's inside the casino. There are different restaurants. There's a casino area with all the slot machines, and then there's shops and that sort of thing. And which casino are we talking about? The MGM Grand. And how, after dinner, what are you doing after dinner? After dinner, we paid our bill, just milling around right outside the MGM's Grand. It looks kind of like a mall. We were just out there hanging out with a ton of other people, big crowd. Did you meet anyone in particular that you remember when you were milling around outside the Rainforest Cafe? Yes. Who did you meet? I met Travis. Mr. Alexander? Right, yes, Travis Alexander. Tell us how you met him. I was standing with Michelle and Lenore, the executive director, my upline. His name is Dave, or was Dave, and then I'm standing there. There are crowds like just everywhere, different people grouped together, and out of my left there's somebody walking towards me really fast, and I could see this person coming out of my periphery, and he was walking towards me, and he seemed to be going somewhere. So I moved to step out of the way to let him pass, and he stopped right in front of me and put his hand out and said, "Hi, I'm Travis." And was he saying that to you? Yes. And did you shake his hand? Yes. And what happened after that? Well, he knew everybody that was in the circle that I was with. So he just stood there and we all talked, or he was talking to people. He was talking with me. All right. Did you go somewhere after that? Yeah, we began to walk throughout the casino, Michelle and I, and Travis walked with us. And what did you do when you were walking together throughout the casino? Travis and I, we were talking, getting to know each other a little. We walked past a sports bar and he was checking the football scores, and so he just began to ask me about my interest and things like that. We eventually meandered around to the lobby where the big golden lion statue is, and we were standing there and just hanging out and watching different associates that were coming and going. That's where the entrance is. And during this time, are the two of you specifically talking with each other? Right, mostly just him and I speaking. I kind of realized I wasn't talking to anyone else in the group. He was keeping my attention. And you said he was asking you questions about you? Yes. Was he talking about himself? Yes. Did you learn anything about him? I learned, he was asking my interests, so it seemed like every time I said, I like this or I like that, he was hearing my interests, so it seemed that we had a lot in common. What kind of things were those? Football, the same team. What else? Traveling, journaling, things like that. And how long is it that you spent this time together? Are we talking Wednesday night? Yeah, this is Wednesday evening. Okay, how long is it? Do you have any idea how long you spent with him? I think maybe an hour, 2 hours. It didn't seem like a long time. It wasn't brief. And how did the night end? Said goodbye, and I went back to my hotel room. That's it. Were you sharing a hotel room? Yes, with Michelle, her mom, and Lenore. Michelle, her mom, and Lenore. Okay. Thank you. All right. So on to the next day now. Thursday, right? Right. Okay, so what happened for associates on Thursday? Well, Thursday was pretty much an open date. There was an executive banquet that occurs in the evening, and unless you're an executive director, you don't get an invite. Jodi, tell us what an executive director is. Sure. Within a company, usually within multi-level marketing companies, there are different levels you reach depending on your production. So an executive director is a level that you must qualify for on a monthly for monthly based on your volume of production. If you qualify for that, which is usually a high level of production, either yourself or your team members then become executive directors. All right, so you said there was an executive director banquet that evening? Yes. But you weren't anywhere near an executive director, is that right? No, I wasn't. I don't think I was anything at that point. Okay, so what is it that you and your friends are doing that Thursday? And we were just hanging out most of the day. We went across town. We went to Applebee's. We just had dinner, that sort of thing. At some point during the day, did you get a message or have contact from Mr. Alexander? Yes. What was it that you receive or hear? We were at Applebee's having dinner, and he called Michelle. He had her phone number, and he invited me to go with him to the executive director banquet. And why is it that Mr. Alexander, to your understanding, why is it that Mr. Alexander got to go to the executive director banquet? He was an executive director. Okay, what happens when you get this invite? Does Michelle tell you? Yeah, she was on the phone with him, and I just heard her half of the conversation. I didn't know who it was. When she hung up, she asked me. She told me he wants you to go with him. What was your initial response? I declined. You declined? Yes. Why is that? It was a nice event. I didn't bring a dress or anything like that. I didn't have the proper clothing to wear. And what did your friends think about that? Michelle, and then Martinez, the prosecutor, objected. So then she went on to another question. Who is it that you were with at Applebee's? Michelle and Lenore. What did Michelle and Lenore have to say about you declining to go to the executive director's banquet? Martinez objects again, lack of foundation. Then she again says, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the objection. Repeat your objection, lack of foundation. She goes on, Michelle and Lenore were talking to you? Right. And had Michelle spoken with Mr. Alexander? Yes. And did Michelle convey to you that Mr. Alexander wanted you to go to the executive director banquet? Yes. And you said no, is that right? Is that what you told her? Right, I did. Okay, and did Michelle and Lenore have any kind of response to you? Yes. Same objection from Martinez. Which one? It's sustained. She comes, which one? And she says, did they both talk to you? Yes. Did they both have similar feelings about you declining to go? Yes. Okay, and so generally speaking, what were they feeling? They thought it would be a bad idea to turn it down. They said it was a rare opportunity to go. Not very many people get to go, and I should take advantage of it. Based on your conversation with both Lenore and Michelle, did you get the feeling that this executive director banquet was a special event? Objection, leading, overruled, you may answer, yes. All right, and so ultimately, did you not go? Ultimately, I did end up going. You did end up going. How is it that you ended up going? First we drove over to Kohl's and we were trying to get dresses and things. I called Travis back and I told him, I can't make any promises. I don't have a dress, but I'll look. And at one point he called me back and said, we have a dress for you back at the hotel, so come back. So we drove back through the traffic and just got there. Now let me interrupt you there. You said that Mr. Alexander called you back to advise you that he had found a dress for you? Yes. And where did he find a dress for you? His best friend's wife, Sky, she has a dress. She was the same size as me, so she let me use it. How is it that Mr. Alexander knew your size? He just described me to her, my understanding, and she said she could wear my dress. She had brought two. All right, and up and to that point, had you found a dress at all that you could buy on your own? No. So what did you do? We ditched the operation at Kohl's and drove back to the MGM. All right, and did you then meet Sky Hughes? I met her. I didn't really formally like shake her hand and meet her. I didn't see her until we finally made it to the banquet. We were late, so Travis and I made it into the banquet hall, and she was at the round table where there was a bunch of other people. Is that where you found out whose dress it was that you were borrowing? I think I did find out at the table there. Yeah, he pointed her out. All right, so how is it, how do you get back to the hotel? How is that? Is there a dress waiting in your room? No, it was in Sky's room with her husband, Chris. It was in their room, so they gave Travis the room key, and Michelle and I and Travis went up to their room, and I put on the dress. All right, so you went to... Tell us what happened at this executive director banquet. Sure, usually there are people who have earned $100,000 or more in the year. Mr. Martinez, objection, non-responsive. She was asked. Sustained. Judge, what may we approach? And they have a sidebar. Okay, let's see here. What type of people, Jodi, what type of people attend this banquet? Again, they're executive directors and ones that they invite. So typically a spouse or a friend. Okay, and what happens at these banquets with these $100,000 earners? Right, not everyone at the banquet is, they're called ring earners. Once you earn $100,000, you get a ring. So not everybody is a ring earner, but everybody who got in is an executive director. What happens, so what goes on? Are there speeches? Do you just eat? Well, we get a 3-course dinner. There are speeches with the ring earners, usually people who just earn their ring, so they give their speech of how they had success and that sort of thing. And this type of speech, what kind of speech is it? Well, it's a very inspirational. They're really good speakers, typically. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they make you cry. And how did those type of, well, what else happened? Well, we get, our salad and dinner served. It just boosts morale, basically. Is it a chance for people to mingle with the high income earners? Right. It's a chance to rub shoulders with very substantial people. And at this point in time, I believe you had said earlier that you weren't anything at this point as far as PPL was concerned. Right. I was just at the bottom level of whatever there was at the time. And so what was your impression of rubbing shoulders with these types of people? It was interesting. Like, they've always been like my customers or clients or guests in restaurants, but now I'm sitting there with them. It was different. It was interesting. All right, and this is Thursday night? Yes. Okay, so what happened? How long does this banquet last, approximately? Well, we were late, but I think it's about an hour and a half. Right. Did you do anything afterwards? Yes, afterwards we just, that night, I didn't do much. Other people do. But that night we hung out outside the banquet hall with other people who weren't invited. They showed up and mingle around. Jodi, when you say you didn't do much, I'm sorry, I can't hear when the printer's going. You said, can you tell me again what it is that you said you did afterwards? Sure. Afterward, Michelle came, Lenore came. We stayed for a little while, maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then we left. And where did you go? Back to the hotel room. And was that it for the night? That I recall, yes, for that night. Did you have any other contact with Mr. Alexander that night? Yes. He texted me. He contacted you via text? Right. Just one, or was it a conversation? It wasn't a conversation. He just thanked me for accompanying him and said, "You're a great girl." How did Mr. Alexander behave towards you during the banquet? He was very mature, very gentlemanly. He was kind. He seemed chivalrous, if that makes any sense. On Friday, is Friday the next day? Yes. And on Friday, what kind of things go on at the convention? I'm just going to check something because there's a text coming through, and I just want to make sure everything is okay. Is everything okay? It looks okay. Is everybody okay? everybody okay? These are the two people that are talking. I'm just going to see if everything's okay with you guys. That's her attorney, Mrs. Wilmot. Okay, let me see now. What's going on? Make sure everything's okay. Everything okay? Hi, Jesse. You're going to listen? Okay. Is everything okay? Good for everybody? Okay. All right. Do you want to continue with this? Is it okay? Okay, good. All right. Just making sure, because I heard a text come through, and sometimes that means like you can't hear me or there's some kind of issue. All right. And on Friday, what kind of things go on at the convention? Friday morning is when the first session of the convention starts, and it's like stadium seating, and there's also seats on the floor. Let me stop you there. When you say stadium seating, how big of an area are we talking? It's pretty huge. It may hold 12 to 16,000 people. It's almost like if you can imagine an NBA stadium. There's a flat area where the basketball court might be, but it's not a basketball court there. Rather, there's a stage set up, and at the end of that, the stadium seating looks like a U all around and raised up high. And where's the meeting taking place? Is that where the meeting's taking place? Yes. Okay, so did you go to the meeting? Yes. And where did you sit? We were sitting, Michelle and I, other people are sitting in the stadium area towards the back. Part of the U, if you go down, it was towards the back, like the farthest from the stage. And did you see Mr. Alexander at all that day? Yes. Where did you see him? He sent me a text message and invited me to sit down on the floor. It's not on the actual floor, but the chairs on the floor are close to the stage. And he did that on Friday? Yes. And did you do that? I did. So did you get to sit then? Who were you sitting with when you sit on the floor area? Those are all reserved for executive directors seating as well. Okay, so the girl who hasn't done much in PPL is now sitting with a bunch of executive directors? Right. Were you sitting with yourself or by yourself, or did friends get to come with you? There was only one open seat that was right next to Travis. Okay, so that particular day, did you spend the day sitting next to Mr. Alexander? Most of it, yes. So did you have more conversations with him during that day? Somewhat. Mostly we were listening to what was going on the stage. They were great, but yeah. We passed at one point, I think it was the next day, we passed a few texts back and forth. And how long did that part of the convention go? So Friday, from in the morning to when? There's a morning session, and then there's lunch, then there's the afternoon session, and then we break for the evening. At lunch, who did you spend lunch with? With Michelle, and Lenore. Yes. Mr. Alexander was not at lunch? No. Did you go back to sitting next to Mr. Alexander in the afternoon? Yes. What about Friday night? Did you have any contact with Mr. Alexander Friday night? I think I did, but this was more like in a group setting. I don't recall exactly Friday night. Okay, all right. So on to Saturday. Yes, what happened at the convention on Saturday? Same thing. I'm sitting on the floor next to Travis, and we're listening to the speeches, the talks, the training. And then there's lunch with Michelle and Lenore. And then in the evening, we were together again in the food court at that point. In the evening, you're together? In the food court area. Who's together? I'm sitting next to Travis. There were a bunch of associates. His friend Chris is there. I didn't know everybody who was there. What are you doing at the food court? Mostly just talking, socializing. Chris is telling stories. We were just listening. And how long are you there in the food court together? How long are we there? Approximately. Not too long. I leaned over and I told him I would like to talk to him later. No, I'm sorry. I sent him a text message earlier and I told him I would like to talk to him one-on-one when we have a chance. And so at that point, he was sitting next to, he said, "Do you want to go for a walk?" So I took that as an opportunity to speak to him. "And what is it that you wanted to speak to him about?" "Well, at that point, I got the sense that he liked me. So I wanted to tell him that I had a boyfriend." "Because you were still dating Mr. Brewer?" "Yes." "And so do you end up going on a walk with him?" "Yes." "And where were you guys going?" "We were just, at this point, it was about 1 a.m, really late. So we were just walking around near all the shops and things. They were all closed, but we found a small park bench, like some type of seat, like against the wall, and sat down there and talked for a little while." "And what kind of things were you talking about, generally, that you can remember?" "Oh, just life. Subjects like he wanted to know my favorite colors, favorite movie. He told me his. He told me not to settle for mediocrity in my life and my relationships and things like that. He told me that he sensed that, well, that's what I wanted to talk to him about, was my boyfriend. Michelle told him I had a boyfriend." "I'm sorry. What did you say? Michelle told him that you had a boyfriend?" "Right, yes." "And so he had sensed that that's what you wanted to talk about?" "Yes." "Okay, and what other things did you talk about?" "He told me about his religion. He asked me what my religious beliefs were." "What was his religion?" "He said, 'I'm Mormon.'" "And did he describe it all to you, or did he just tell you?" "The only thing he said as far as that goes was, when I told him my religion, he said, 'Well, the best thing you could have said is, I'm Mormon, but the second best thing you could have said is what you just said.' So what I told him, what he heard was, 'But I wasn't LDS. That's all I didn't hear you. Nothing about the church at that time.'" "And what did you tell him as far as what your religion was?" "I told him that I didn't adhere to one particular religion, and that I had certain beliefs that I had, and that I was always open and searching for things." "All right." So at some point during the conversation, do you also tell him that you have a boyfriend?" "Yes." "How did that go?" I told him that while we were still walking, he smiled, looked at the floor, and kind of kept his eyes averted. He seemed a little bit, I don't know, he didn't seem upset or anything. He just, "Okay, and how does this night end?" "He walks me back to the elevators. We get in the elevator and he walks me back to my suite." "And when you're on the elevator, does anything in particular happen?" "Yes. When I got onto the elevator, they had mirrors all in the elevator, and he was leaning up against the railing, against one of the mirrors, and he put his hands up. He didn't touch me, but he had his hands on both sides of the railing." "So did he get closer to you?" "Yeah, he was inches from my face." "And did he have either hand on either side of you?" "Yes." "Is that what you mean?" "Right." "Okay, and tell me what happened." "He just licked his lips and said, 'I wish you didn't have a boyfriend.'" "Anything else happened?" At one point, the elevator door opened and started to shut, and another guy caught the door and came on, and so Travis backed off really quick and leaned against the adjacent wall till he stepped off, and then he was back on me the next few floors up. "And as far as that particular evening, is that the extent of any type of gestures on Mr. Alexander's part?" "Yes." "And did you go to your room after that?" "I did." "And he didn't follow you, did he?" "He walked me all the way up to the door. He didn't come in." "So the next day is Sunday, is that right?" "Yes." "Okay, and what happens on Sunday at the convention?" "Okay, at this time this Sunday there was a breakout. Later they began to do it before rather than on Sundays, but this time it's called breakout. It's like the last meeting before we all go home, but it's not the whole company. It's just again, just the team. So we were in a little theater, a small theater, and there were a few people that were at the top of the smaller organization that were speaking on and about this and that. Did you have any contact with Mr. Alexander at this breakout? Minimal. After that, well, he approached me and invited me to get breakfast at the buffet that was there at the MGM. We went there afterwards. And was anyone else with you, too? I remember Dave being there, maybe his brother Mike. There might have been one other person. I don't recall who it was. Okay, so it was more than just the two of you having breakfast? Right. Okay. And anything in particular about the conversation or anything about breakfast? Travis ate a lot of ice cream for breakfast, so that's all I remember. All right. This Sunday, did you leave the convention on Sunday? Yes. And how is it that you left when Mr. Alexander... Oh, he left first. He was getting into the taxi cab. The bellhop made a joke about him being crazy for not taking me with him, and then he joked back with him, and then he came and gave me a hug, and then we parted. And I later checked out with Michelle and Lenore. We had lunch again at the Rainforest Cafe, and then we drove home. Now, this was your first convention, right? Right. After leaving that convention, did you have any type of impressions about it that you learned from? Yeah, it's just, I had never been involved in a network marketing company before, so that was my first experience with that. It's very inspiring. I had relatives that had tried to do things like that before with other companies. They were not successful. Mr. Martinez's objection, non-responsive as to her impressions. Sustained. Did you have any other impressions having to do with your life and where your life was going? Well, I thought I saw an opportunity that would help me to make ends meet, more than I was at the time. All right, when you leave, where do you go? We drove back to Hemet with where my car was parked, and then I went to Palm Desert that evening. Now, at this time, between you and Mr. Brewer, showing you exhibit number 695, at this time between you and Mr. Brewer, what type of relationship, just prior to going to the convention, how was your relationship going? It was going okay, but it wasn't going anywhere really. Anywhere in the sense of what? Well, my goal was to get married, have children, start a family, and he was happy where he was. He liked things as they were. And by December of 2006, how long had you been together with Mr. Brewer? Well, we were coming up on 4 years. And so, 2006, gosh, maybe more than 4 years. No, it was almost 4 years. I'm sorry. And so at that point in time, did you have a change of heart as far as when you first met with him in regard to what you wanted in the future? Yes. In what way? Well, at this point, I had hit 26, age 26, a few months earlier, and by my 20s were halfway over. So I realized that I didn't have time to just linger in a relationship that was going nowhere. Even though I loved him and he loved me, I wanted to move on. I wanted to move on with him, but he didn't want to have children, so that was an important goal of mine at the time. Was that something, as far as you were aware, is that something Mr. Brewer was still clinging to the idea that he didn't want to be married again? Right. And didn't want to have children? Yes. And so you go to this convention, and during this convention, during the times that you spoke with Mr. Alexander, did you ever discuss the idea of family with Mr. Alexander? Not you having a family, but the idea of what families mean. Right. At convention, not so much family, just the idea that I shouldn't settle for anything less than what I wanted in life kind of thing. Did that mean something to you at this point in time with your relationship with Mr. Brewer? It did. It struck me because I was comfortable in my relationship with Daryl, but I realized that it was because what Travis told me kind of made me realize it really wasn't going anywhere. So, do I want to continue in this relationship and be comfortable and never pursue my dreams, or do I want to get uncomfortable and pursue my dreams? And after you leave the convention, are there any plans for speaking again with Mr. Alexander? Well, he said that he would call me, and he did, the very next day. And did you have contact with him that week? Yes. Besides him just calling you the next day? Oh, let's see. I did actually the following weekend. Was that the first time you had a chance to see him? Yes. And where is it? So the next time that you saw him, how close in time were we from the convention that you just left? I saw him Sunday. We left Las Vegas, and then I saw him again Saturday, the following Saturday. The following Saturday. Right. How did that happen? Let's see. There was a going-away party at his friend Chris's house. His two brothers were moving, so they were having a going-away party and a welcome-back party because Chris's wife's brother was coming back from his mission. So it was like a dual purpose. Her brother was coming back, and that was in California? That's in Southern California, close to San Diego. So from the time that you leave the convention to the time that you see Mr. Alexander again, was anything changed between you and Mr. Brewer? On Thursday, yes, of that week, I sat down and had a conversation with Daryl. I wanted, you can call him Daryl, with Daryl. And I just told him my feelings about everything, and I told him, that I understood where he was coming from, and I wanted to do what was right with him, and I felt like I should pursue my dreams. You say that you sat down with him on Thursday. How is it that it was Thursday that you sat down with him? Well, I had already been invited to this event. I thought Travis was going to be there. There's kind of an attraction there. There might be something that happens, might not. But I don't cheat on my boyfriends. But I don't want to even go there if I was with this person. And since I already knew this relationship wasn't going anywhere, I made that decision. It was like push come to shove, kind of. I thought this was the time to do it. So I just remember it being a Thursday and when I saw Travis. Okay, and all right, so did you end up then going to California? Well, I was already in California. That's right, you were in California. Yes. Did you end up going to see either Temecula or Murrieta? Yes. And that was, whose house was that again? Chris and Sky Yu's. Okay. Did you drive there by yourself? Yes. And what happens when you get there? What day do you get there? I got there Saturday. I don't know, afternoon, evening, something like that. The party was already going on. Okay, and what happens when you got there? What did you do? Michelle is there, a bunch of objection, non-responsive. She was asked what she did. Sustained. The approach, let's see, they go on there. All right, so we were talking about when you get to the Yu's house, right? Yes. Who was there at the Yu's house? Michelle was there, Chris, Guy, Brian, her brother, Mike, and Dave, which are Chris's brothers. Then there was this guy named Jeff. So there's a bunch of people there. Right, there's a bunch of people there. And you said it was some type of celebration? Yes. What type of celebration? Mike and Dave were moving to Colorado, and Brian was coming back from his mission. When you get there, are you speaking with anybody? I'm sticking close to Michelle. I didn't really know that many people. Is this the same Michelle that got you involved with PPL? Yes. And is it the same Michelle that you carpooled with to Las Vegas? Right. And so you were talking to her mostly? Yes, at that point I was. Okay, when you first arrived, was Mr. Alexander there? No. At some point did you see him? He came much later. All right, so what types of things were you doing? And who are you speaking with while Mr. Alexander is not there? I'm hanging out with everybody in the living room, kitchen area. Michelle left, and essentially the whole party dispersed. I was staying the night there with them that night. I'm sorry. You were staying the night? Where? At their house. Chris's house? Chris and Sky's house. Why was that? Well, I was invited earlier that week to go attend church with them in the morning. So it's Saturday night and they're all going to church in the morning, and Travis invited me to go to church with them. And when is it that he made that invite for you to go to church? When he initially invited me over to the party, he said He had already spoken with Sky and asked if it was okay if I go to the church with them, so rather than drive home and drive back, I just stayed with them. And did this invitation come during the week, in between the convention and the weekend that you went to the Hughes house? Yes. And what type of contact or communication were you having with Mr. Alexander that week? We spoke on the phone every night that week. Okay, so you were getting to know him better. Yes. And as far as you know, was he getting to know you better? Right. When you get to, do you remember about how long you were at this party before Mr. Alexander shows up? I don't remember how long in particular, but it was a few hours at least. Okay, how are you feeling at this party with people you just met? They made me feel comfortable. They were nice and it was pleasant. So do you remember Mr. Alexander showing up? Yes. And what happens when he shows up? He walked in with his smile and had a swagger, and he just slapped a stack of $100 bills on the counter, and everyone laughed. What was that about? It's money that he had earned at the previous convention. When you have a certain amount of production throughout the previous months you earn, sometimes they give you cash incentives. You collect the cash right there at the convention, so it was something that he brought to the party. He brought it to the party, and then he put it out on the table? Yeah, he just kind of slapped it down on the counter. So what are you doing once Mr. Alexander gets there? What's everyone doing? We're all hanging out. He didn't say hi to me or talk to me at first, so that was a little bit awkward. Why was it awkward? Because we had just been speaking for at least an hour or more at a time every night for the previous 5 or 6 nights, and then he shows up, but he didn't even say hi. He didn't even say hello, how are you, anything like that. So I'm there and I'm kind of waiting for him to make the round, saying hi to everybody, and he doesn't say hi to me. Did he eventually talk to you? Yes. How does that occur? About 20 minutes, I think. Maybe it was after he had been there. He just kind of nodded at me sideways, glanced, said, "Hey there." How did you feel about that? I didn't think too much of it at the time. It didn't bother you too much? Yeah, I didn't give it a lot of thought at the time. It was noticeable. Okay, what is it that the rest of you did for the rest of that night? We sat down in the living room and put on a DVD that someone had filmed of him of the previous summer at the event that I skipped for the wedding. He dresses up as an alter ego called Eddie Smell. He puts on a mullet wig and cut-off shorts and a shirt that says, "Who wants to be 100 air?" It's really funny, kind of gives this speech. Did you watch that video? Yeah. And what's really funny about it? It's a little bit trashy, but he's making jokes. Some are offensive, but at the same time, they're funny, almost like Saturday Night Live style. And is this the presentation that occurs during one of these meetings, conventions, or retreats? Yeah, it was at the retreat. So is everybody involved watching Mr. Alexander's video? Right. At that point, it was just Travis and I on a big chair, Chris and Sky on the sofa, and Jeff was there also. He was staying the night also. He was what? Staying the night as well as Travis, just the 3 of us there. Okay, and so after you watch the video, do you have any more contact at this point with Mr. Alexander? Yes. Is he talking to you more? Well, before the video, he was saying, maybe this is a deal breaker, meaning that I might write him off after I see the video, but it was funny. So he was being funny with you? Yeah, kind of. And what happens after the video? After that, we all dispersed and went to our bedrooms to go to sleep. Did you have your own bedroom? I did. And what about Mr. Alexander? Do you now know if he had his own bedroom? He did. He had his own assigned room. When you dispersed to your own bedroom, did you get ready for bed and go to sleep? He told me that he would be in there in a little while and we would just hang out and talk some more. So I just got ready for bed and threw on some sweats and hung out. But you said you got ready for bed and threw on some sweats? Right. It was a shirt and sweatpants, yeah. So that was your pajamas, basically? Right. And were you waiting for Mr. Alexander? Yeah, not long. It was a couple of minutes. Okay, and what happened? What happens? He came into the room and shut the door, and we sat down on the bed, and I figured we would start talking about, is that what you expected? Yes. And did you talk? Yes. Immediately? Well, not really. Not that I recall anything that stands out particularly. Okay, what is it that happened then? We started kissing, which I thought might happen too, but we began to kiss, and it just went to more and more and more. All right. Did he eventually take your clothes off? Right. And what happens when he took your clothes off? We ended up having sex, kind of, yeah. Did he give you oral sex? He did. And did you give it to him? Yes. How is it, this is timeline-wise, this is a week after you met him? A week and a half. Week and a half, right. How is it that you felt about this? I mean, physically it wasn't unpleasant, but it was just, internally I felt uncomfortable because it felt like it went real fast, real soon. I liked him, but just seemed like it was a lot all of a sudden, a lot right up front. Did you tell him no? No. Why not? I didn't want to disappoint him. I didn't want him to not like me, just didn't say no. Okay, and at this point in time, did you know anything about the Mormon religion? I knew from that South Park made fun of them a lot, the cartoon sitcom, and other than that, I felt that they were just another Christian denomination. So, did you have any idea? What about the Mormon religion and the views of the Mormon religion of premarital sex? No. Did Mr. Alexander at that point in time ever discuss that with you? Up to that point, not the views on sex, no. Did he stay the night in your room? We fell asleep. Yeah, we did. I don't remember at what point he left, but we did fall asleep on my bed. And did you have an understanding at all about whether or not this something was okay if the youths found out about it or if anyone else found out about it? I didn't give it much thought at that point. I mean, I'm not very open about these kinds of things. I'm a little more private about it, but I didn't really give it any thought as to what, they were on the other side of the wall, Okay, did Mr. Alexander get up and leave your room in the morning? I don't remember exactly when he left, but by the time the whole house woke up, he was no longer in my room. And so to your knowledge, nobody else would have seen him coming out of your room? To my knowledge. What happens the next morning? We go to church. Was that the first time you ever went to a Mormon church? Yes. And how was that for you? Well, it wasn't bad. But I was really tired and I wasn't able to really focus. I was really tired. I stayed up too late. Travis and I were up very late. Okay. And Mr. Alexander went to church with you? Yes. Did you ever talk about what happened that night, the next day or two? There might have been some discussion about it. It wasn't very in-depth. Did you ever have a discussion then about your feelings as far as this coming on really fast? No, we didn't. After Sunday, when did you go home? I went home that same day. Actually, the same day on Sunday. Yes. And do you have any plans to speak with Mr. Alexander or have any contact with him again after that? Yeah, I figured we would speak, and he walked me out to the car and gave me a kiss, and I drove off. So was it he gave you a kiss goodbye, you mean? Right. Okay, and did you drive home from there? I did. About how long of a distance is that? I think it's like an hour. It's about an hour, but it's not quite 2 hours. I don't remember the exact distance. Okay, and at this point in time, where was Mr. Alexander living? He was living in Mesa, Arizona? Right. Do you know if he left that Sunday? No, he didn't leave that Sunday, actually. When you get back home, do you continue the contact with Mr. Alexander? Yes. And is he continuing to call you? Yes. Is he continuing to text you? Right. Are there any plans being made for when you will see him again? Yes. And what are those plans? He wants to meet me at Starbucks in Palm Desert. Well, I chose Starbucks. He wanted to meet me in Palm Desert, and the house wasn't an option because Daryl was home at the time and it didn't seem appropriate. You say Daryl was home at the time, so you and Mr. Brewer had broken up, right? Yes. But what was the living situation after you broke up with him? We both worked. We didn't see each other a lot at home, but Daryl worked at night, so in the afternoon during the day he was home. And we still had our separate bedrooms. So you were still sharing a house? Yes. And what was the relationship then? How is it that you two were getting along? How were you two getting along after the breakup? There was never really a time we didn't get along, so it was fine. We weren't like doing things together and hanging out, but we were getting along. You said that Mr. Alexander wanted to come visit you, right? Yes. In Palm Desert? Right. Where was he going? He was heading back from, well, you asked me if he left. He didn't leave the U's, and he went back to his grandmother's house, so he was heading back from Riverside to Mesa. And during that time, is Palm Desert somewhere? Yes, on the way. Yes, it's on the way. It's on Interstate 10. And so you drive from Riverside and pass through Palm Desert on the way home to Arizona. Okay, and so did you end up seeing him on his way home? Yes, I did. And where is it that you saw him? We met at a Starbucks off the freeway. And you said that the Starbucks was your choice? Right, because it's an easy place to find. And what was your expectations of this particular meeting with Mr. Alexander? He wanted to give me a copy of the Book of Mormon. And did he give you a copy of the Book of Mormon? Yes. How does this meeting go? Do you sit down and talk in Starbucks? Or what happened? Right. We went in, got drinks. He has his dog with him. What's the dog's name? Napoleon. Okay. So we sat down on this like little wrought iron table in the shade. It was warm. It was September. And he gives it to me. I'm sorry. Sorry. Did he give you the Book of Mormon then? He did. And did you discuss it at all? Yes, briefly. What did you briefly discuss? He told me where to start, what to read. He said that the introduction first, and he would talk to me about it. Did you have any discussions about the words of wisdom? Oh, yes, we did. What is that? The word of wisdom it's more of where it says, you do not drink coffee, tea, alcohol, and you do not consume tobacco or illegal drugs. Other than that, did you have any questions about the Mormon religion? Not that I recall, not too much. It was mostly centered around the word of wisdom and where to start in the Book of Mormon. Where to start? In the Book of Mormon. Okay, so do you ever leave from Starbucks? Yes. Why is that? Well, at one point he told me that he was horny, so we drove around the corner where there was a park that was empty. Who drove? He and I drove in our separate cars. Okay, so you both drive to the park around the corner? Yeah, it's kind of around the corner from that street, maybe down a block maybe? And what was the purpose of that? The park was empty because it was a school day and no one was there, and so the purpose of that, I guess, wasn't sure what he wanted, but he got into the car and he got into, I'm going to ask you to slow down. Okay. Because I have a hard time understanding you. Okay. All right. You're going to a park, and is this after he told you that he's horny? Yes. And when you're at the park, did you park your car? Yes. Did he park his car? Yes. And what happened after you parked your cars? He leaves this engine running with the air conditioner on and leaves Napoleon in the car. And then he gets into my car and he asks for a BJ. Okay. And did you give him one? Yes. And during the time that you're giving him that job, did he do anything with the mirror? Right, he does. What does he do? Well, right at the beginning, he took the visor and he flipped it down with the mirror so that he could see 2 different vantage points. And I know just a few days before you talked that you felt uncomfortable with how fast things were moving. In this particular area, why, when he asks you for a BJ, why did you do that? Well, he continued to talk with me. He clearly liked me. It's a bridge we've already crossed, and so it wasn't as, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it was as uncomfortable, that type of thing. It wasn't as uncomfortable. It just became uncomfortable afterwards for me. Tell me why it became uncomfortable afterwards. Well, he refused to kiss me afterwards. He actually grossed out. And then he just kind of got out of my car and left. I mean, we said goodbye. Did you spend any time with him after you finished giving him that? No. Did you go back to Starbucks and have any discussions with him at all anymore? No, no more, not that day. I'm sorry. Not that day. We didn't have any more discussions. Okay, did he just hop in his car? Yes. When was the next time you heard from him? I heard from him later that evening via email. I believe it was that day. Later that evening via email. Yes. Okay, what was the context of the contact with you? He just expressed that he was disappointed in himself and the way he acted in the car, and he said he wants to be a better example for me. How did he make you feel? It made me feel a little bit better because it was a little awkward after the fact, is all. So the fact that he felt badly about his behavior, how did you feel about the whole situation that particular day? Well, I was getting the sense that maybe there was, I didn't understand exactly what he meant. It seemed to me that he was just disappointed. Objection, non-responsive. How did you feel? Sustained. What was the sense that you got from his email to you about how he was feeling? That he was regretting what he did. Okay, and the fact that he was regretting what he did, how did it make you feel? It made me feel a little bit better because it just made me feel like I thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't treat her like that, just for that. Like, not used, but I treated her so like an object kind of a thing. And how did you feel when he left and got in his car and drove away? I felt kind of disappointed, like, ugh. He didn't want to kiss me goodbye. He didn't have a problem kissing me all the other days, so it was just a little bit, I don't know, kind of a red flag that I just ignored. You say you ignored? Right. So after he sent you that email, did he continue to contact you? Yes. Did he continue to call you? Yes. And did he continue to text you? Yes. Were you continuing to have long conversations with him? Yes. And during these long conversations you would have, what were they generally about? They were spiritual in nature or flirting, sometimes sexual in nature, just getting to know each other a little. He told me about himself, his upbringing, his life experiences, and I told him about mine as well. And so you were getting to know each other? Yes. At some point in time after he gives you the Book of Mormon, did you ever have a Mormon missionary come to your house? Right. Almost immediately after I met him, he gave me the Book of Mormon. I don't know how it works, but he contacted the church and missionaries began to come to my house. Okay, and can you explain for us what does that mean when you say missionaries come to your house? What do they do? Okay, they're adults, typically male, females can, but these were guys, and they would just come in twos, and they would come over to my house, and they would teach me. They're called discussions. It's an official team where they give you instructions, like from the church. Did they tell you more about how the church works? Yes. And how it was founded, what they basically are? Okay. How often did the missionaries come see you? It was once a week or twice a week, somewhere around there. How did you feel about these discussions? I liked them. Did you? Yeah. They invited me to the church. What did you like about them? Well, they were closely in alignment with what I believed. The missionaries were very nice. I liked it. The second time I went to the church, I enjoyed it much more than the first. And you said they invited you to the church? Yes. Was there a church close to where you lived in Palm Desert? Yes, there was one down the street away a few miles. Okay, is that where you went? Yes. And what did you think of that? Did you go with the missionaries, or how did you do that? I showed up on my own. They were there to meet me. When you show up on your own, what kind of reception do you get? Do you feel welcomed? Yeah, very welcomed. It's a warm reception. Okay, and what did you think? What did you think of your experience at that particular church? Well, the one thing I believe I looked into more of what was being said. In the Mormon church, you don't have a pastor or a preacher every week. You have members of the congregation that give talks on different subjects. So the person who was speaking that day said some things that impacted me that I never heard a Christian say. And it was, in the lines of how I believed, so I had really liked what I heard. How do you know, if you know, how soon after Mr. Alexander gives you the Book of Mormon did you actually start going to the church in Palm Desert? I can't remember the exact day. I went relatively soon afterwards, but I don't remember it. If it was every single Sunday, I started going fairly regularly at the point, just attending every Sunday, and then and were you meeting anybody? Yeah, I was meeting other people my age who were unmarried. If you're not married, you go to a ward. A ward? Can you tell us what a ward is? A ward is, you can think of it as a congregation. People who are in their 20s, usually 19 to 30 and maybe 18 to 30, typically go to one block, like a service at the time, usually 3 hours each. And then people who are married and have families or are past that age go to what's called the family ward. The other one is called the singles ward. So which ward are you in? I'm in the singles ward. It's not called a ward, it's called a branch, because in Palm Desert, the LDS population is much smaller. So when it's smaller population, it's called a branch rather than a ward. It's the same concept, the same structure. So are you going to church with a bunch of people that are similar in age to you? Yes. And what are you making? And are you making any friends? Yes. And are you enjoying going to church? Yes. While going to church, are the missionaries, are they still coming to your house? Yes. And what types of things are you learning from them? After I took the formal sessions, they would just come over, hang out. I would feed them, give them water, that sort of thing. They would come and hang out. We would talk about church-related things. And during this time in the beginning that you stated that you go to the LDS church, are you learning anything in particular about the LDS view of premarital sex? Yes. What is it that you're learning? Well, the missionaries told me, not in great detail, that premarital sex is forbidden. It's reserved for married people, and Travis also said the same. But, he had a specific definition of where the boundaries are drawn. Objection, non-responsive. Sustained. What was Mr. Alexander's description of premarital LDS, of you want premarital sex? His view is that vaginal sex is that's like the Holy Grail. You don't go there until you're married. And so was it like the other things that you had been doing so far with him? Yeah, I don't know that I would term it okay, but it's like a gray area where it wasn't considered the actual full-on violation of the law of chastity. And is that how Mr. Alexander described it to you? Yes. Did you have any reason to question him? No. And from your understanding, has Mr. Alexander been with the LDS Church some time? Yes, he has served on a mission and all that. Do you know how long he has been with the LDS Church? By that point, he had been with the church a long time, and so anything he told you, did you have any reason to question his knowledge of the LDS religion? No, he knew a lot. They didn't have to. He knew everything. When was the last time you saw Mr. Alexander? The next time I saw him, I believe this was in October. I might have seen him again in September, but I believe it was October in Ephraimburg. What's Ephraimburg? It's a little town in California off of I-10. When you say a little town, what kind of town? Can you describe it for us? Yeah, if you blink, you miss it. It's more like there's a Flying J Hotel there. There's a truck stop. There's a Wendy's. It's close to Blythe. I think it might be inside Arizona. Not sure what state actually it's in. Okay. And up to that time, you see Mr. Alexander. Are you continuing to have contact with him? Yes. Is he continuing to call you? Yes. Is he continuing to text you? Yes. And during these calls and conversations that you have with him, does he invite you To Ehrenberg? Right. Whose plan or idea was it to meet in that town? I don't recall. We just both had a desire to see each other, and he wasn't coming to California for a while. And there was really no reason for me to drive all the way to Arizona. At the time, it didn't occur to me to do that. Okay, so he's got a hotel room or a motel room? Yeah. I'm sorry, did Mr. Alexander get a motel room? He did. And was that in that town of Ehrenberg? Yes. So the text conversations that you're having between the times that you see him, how would you characterize them? At that time, they were flirtation, more innuendos, but there was also spiritual talk, that sort of thing. Were they long conversations or short conversations? They were very long. And so at the time you were making these plans to meet with him in Ehrenberg, what is it that you were expecting? I figured we would hang out, connect like we did on the phone, possibly make out, something like that, but just spend quality time together. It was my impression. That's what I was envisioning. Okay, and who gets to the town first? Travis. And what happens when you arrive? When I arrived, he already had everything checked in and set to go, and he let me in, and pulled me over to sit over on the bed. He let you in where? Into the room. Into the motel room? Yes. And once he let you into the motel room, what happened? We began to make out almost right away. And did you have any type of sexual contact with him that weekend? Yes. What happened? We just made out. I mean, we didn't have full-on intercourse, but there was climax, that sort of thing. Okay, and this is all inside the motel room? Yes. And does this type of contact happen when you first arrive in the town? Yes, immediately. Immediately? And what type of sexual contact did you have? It's what he called grinding. What did that mean to him? What did that mean to him? Yeah. You said he called it grinding. So what does that mean? What does that mean? It's when, basically, you do it, I guess, with your clothes or without your clothes. So we did it without our clothes. I mean, it's similar to sex, but no actual intercourse. And it's just, your bodies are together, just rubbing together. And is that something that happened between the two of you? Yes. And after this type of contact that you have with him, what did you guys do after that? Well, I think we were there 2 nights, so I don't want to confuse. I don't remember everything we did on that day. I remember that we did, but not what day that was that. Okay, so when you weren't having sexual contact, what kind of romantic things were you doing? Well, there was really nothing romantic. Okay, nothing romantic? I wouldn't term any of it romantic. Okay, so what kind of things did you do when you're not having that type of sexual contact? We hung out, we checked out a little bit of what was on TV, we watched Deal or No Deal, he burned a CD for me, he told me something about the Book of Mormon, we watched a movie, we went to breakfast at the truck stop. Okay, and you said you spent 2 days? Yes. At the time in Ehrenberg, how were you feeling as far as your relationship was going with him? What was happening? Well, he just how were you feeling? I mean, I was happy to be there with him. I liked him, but it just seemed like we weren't connecting. And connecting, do you mean in what way? Emotionally, mentally, like we did on the phone. Like you did on the phone? Right. So for this time between the time that you see him, that you see each other, do you feel that you have this emotional connection on the phone? Yeah, it's on the phone. I felt really that on the phone. Is that something that you were expecting? Certainly. And did you get that at all? No, not that I recall. I do recall one instance of when we just had the same sort of energy or feeling that we did on the phone. We would speak for hours. At some point, do you leave that town? Yes. And how is it that you guys left? Well, it was Saturday morning and we parted ways. He had to go to Super Sunday in Phoenix and I had to go to work that night in Palm Desert. So we parted ways and I drove back. Was there any kind of romantic hug goodbye? There was. How'd you feel about your goodbyes? I mean, I don't recall. It was a brief hug, kiss bye. And you both drove to your respective places? Yes. When you left that town, did your contact continue? Did he continue to call you right away? No, he didn't. What do you mean? What happened? He typically called me at night, and he didn't call me that night, so I thought I might have called him and left a message, a voicemail, or sent a text message. Was it unusual that he didn't call you that night? One night out of like here or there, that wasn't too unusual, but I did want to know that he made it home safe, so I told him that in the voicemail, and he didn't call back, and I was a little bit worried. Did you go for some time without him calling you at all? Yes. And did you go for some time without him even texting you at all? Yes. And during that time when he's not having any contact with you, how did you feel about your meeting in Edinburgh? Well, the first time I felt a little bit concerned about him. And I got a little bit worried, he was not interested anymore. And by the fourth or third day, I felt really dumb. Like I pretty much figured out that's what's happening. Because since the day we met or parted in Las Vegas, he had never gone that long without calling me. And now he wasn't calling me at all. So I figured he just got, not interested anymore. I felt really stupid. You felt really stupid? Yeah. At some point, did he finally call you? Yeah. And how did that go? He, in a very joking way, he blamed me for not calling him and acted like his feelings were hurt. So he put it back on you? Yes. And did you feel like he was jokingly, blaming you? He was guilting me, but he did it in a very joking way. Did he explain to you why he didn't call you? Give you a real explanation? No, he just apologized. He said, let's not go that long without talking. How did that make you feel after he goes on for several days without talking to you, and then he calls you, and during that call, he was nice to you on the phone? Yeah, he was very nice. How do you feel after he called you after that couple of days? I felt a lot better. Did you feel better about your relationship again? Yes. Did you feel like maybe you weren't so stupid? Yeah, I thought I was just reading into it. I'm sorry. I thought I was just reading into it too much, overthinking it kind of thing. And so after he makes that contact with you again, do you go back to where he's calling you? Yes. And back to where he's texting you? Yes. And back to having these conversations, these long conversations in the evening? Yes. And you said this was in Edinburgh. You met him in Edinburgh in October? Yes. And that was October of what year? 2006. And during this time, are you continuing to learn about the LDS religion? Yes. Are you continuing to go to your own church in Palm Desert? Right. At some point, your conversations with him, these text conversations, are they getting flirtatious? Yes. And does he ever send you a photograph of himself? Yes. Did he send you a photograph of his genitalia? Yes. And this is when? This was when I was at Super Saturday in my region in Anaheim, and we were texting back and forth. It was getting more flirty, and we kept trying to, objection, non-responsive, restate your question. When is it that he sent you a picture of his genitalia? It would have been November 11th, 2006. And is there something or conversation that led up to this picture of his genitalia? Yes. What led up to it? Just flirting. Flirting conversation? Right. And were these conversations mostly by text at this point? That day it was, because I was at an event, so I wasn't on the phone during the event, but I was texting. You were texting him? Okay. And why is it that you were doing... What event were you at? It was a Super Saturday or a regional event. It's called either one. And during that event, is that when he sent you the picture of his genitalia? Actually, the conversation persisted beyond the regional, and a friend and I, an associate, all went to a restaurant. Tell me what happened at the restaurant. We were all sitting around the table, and I continued to text with him, and it just, continued to build. And then, what continued to build? The flirtation. Okay. And a text came through, and I flipped open my phone to look at it because I couldn't see what he had texted, and I had never received pictures on my phone before, so I didn't know what to look for. But the icon informed me that I had a text message, so I'm looking for it, and I don't see it. And then finally I find it. And so I flipped my phone shut real quick because I didn't want people to see what it was. How did you feel when you saw a picture, when you saw what he texted you? I was surprised. I mean, I didn't feel offended or anything, but I was surprised. Okay, showing you exhibits 1393. Is this one of the pictures that he sent to you? Yeah. And he sent this to you. He sent you two that day? Is that right? Right. One right after the other? Yeah. We can see the date on this, November 11th, 2006. Yes. And the time, 15:27. Yes. Is that military time? Yes. To your understanding? Yes. So what time is that? 3:57 or 3:27 in the afternoon? Yes. Okay, and then they went on an afternoon recess. Let's see. Okay. Trying to see when this goes back. Oh, they're talking in the court. Let's see. I don't think she goes on again. I think this is just all there talking in the court, and I just trying to see if she had any. Okay, so that's the testimony of that, and let's see what if you guys are still there or not or what. Okay, so good night, Tammy. Everybody, she confused. Hi, Carol, Lucy. Hi, Mimi. Hi, Deborah. Irene. Sweet Pea. If she didn't kill him, I'd feel sorry for her. A very messed up girl, Carol Lucy said. So yeah, that's that part. I have to get a drink. I'll be right back. My mouth is so dry from reading all that. I'll be right. You're right here listening. Okay, don't stop, Carolyn. Okay, Carol Lucy, I just need to get a drink. Okay. Drink. Let me see what else I can find here to go over. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Let's see. That's a weird taste. Wait, what is that? White peach. Okay, so, yeah. You got a drink here. Love the reading. I've watched the trial over and over. I know, right? Easy Jones. All right, let me see what else we can look at. That was the, let me just make sure. I think that was the special. Let me see if this was the same thing that we looked at. Okay, so this is, we can look at, I think this is that closed door testimony next that we can look at. I believe this is that. Direct examination by Mrs. Wilmot, her attorney. And this was the closed proceedings. Family members of the victims are permitted by law to be present, and the rest of it was closed. So then, let's see. They will go on to this one. We'll read this testimony and see what the closed door testimony. Let me just see what we can. Let's see. Over there. Okay. Could you tell us your name again? This is her attorney again, Miss Wilmot. Jodi Arias. And Jodi, have you already been convicted of killing Travis Alexander? Yes. And did you kill Travis Alexander? Yes. When is the first time that you admitted that to anyone? In 2010. This happened in 2008, didn't it? Yes. Why did it take 2 years to admit that you did it? It took me that long to be able to admit to myself that I did it. Why did it take you that long to admit it to yourself? Because what I did was so horrific that I could never have imagined myself doing that to another human being. And did that make it difficult for you to even think about it yourself? Yes. You were present this morning when Miss Sorensen and Mr. Alexander spoke to the jury, weren't you? Yes. And did you listen to what they had to say? Yes. What do you think of when you hear what they had to say? Objection, relevance. It is mitigation. Overruled. I think that when I hear that, if I could do, I wish so badly that I could just take that away from them, and then I could reverse what I did, and then I could take away what all these people are feeling that I have hurt, including Travis. You were here the other day also, right? When we sat here and watched your interviews with Detective Flores? Yes. In those interviews, were you being truthful about your participation of what you did to Travis? No. Why weren't you being truthful about that? Objection, lack of foundation. Which time? Sustained. During all those interviews with Detective Flores, anything surrounding my having to deal with Travis dying, I was not truthful about that. Why? Well, again, it was something that I was years from being able to even coming around to admitting to myself that I did something that horrible. Also, I had never been in trouble with the law. I was very lost. I didn't really know how to act or what to do. When you look at yourself in those videos, what do you think about yourself? It is revolting. I look at that, I just think about how stupid I was. I was lost. I think of I think of what just those lies put so many people through, and just wish I could. There are a lot of things I wish I could do over again, but that is just one of them. We know that you then made a phone call to Mr. Alexander's voicemail, right? Yes. And that was just after June 4th, after you left his house, is that right? Yeah, I think it was still on June 4th, Carolyn's birthday. It was right around that. It was at night. And in that phone call, were you truthful in that phone call, that voicemail that you left for Mr. Alexander? No. Why did you do that? By the time I made the phone call, I realized that I had done something very bad. I couldn't remember details, but I knew I had a very heavy feeling, and I knew that I had done something very bad. So that phone call was the beginning of when I started to cover my tracks. When you listen to your voicemail on that phone call, what do you think of yourself? Well, I'm talking very fast. I'm nervous. I remember I was at the Hoover Dam. I remember that phone call, and I remember how many tries it took to get the recording right so that I sounded normal. And I just think that that was something I shouldn't have done. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And after that phone call, did you drive to go see someone else? Ryan Burns? Yes. Was Mr. Burns, was he expecting you? He was. After you did this bad thing, why did you continue to go on and see Mr. Burns? Well, after driving some more, my impulse was to go home, but a lot of people in Utah were expecting me, and I thought if I didn't go to Utah, everyone is going to wonder. And so my intention was to go to Utah and pretty much say hi and bye, not even stay for the entire day and just leave at that point. At that point, were you trying to cover up what had happened? Yeah, at that point I was trying to act normal as I could manage, and just trying to act like I had never been to Arizona, and I was just trying to cover up. At that point, why is it that you couldn't say something to somebody? That you couldn't say what really happened? Something like that is just, I know who I am and who I've been my whole life, and for those few minutes out of my whole life, I was someone that I wasn't, and I couldn't even face that. It is completely distorting how I lived my whole life. I couldn't even wrap my mind around the fact that I did that. I can't even. It's still so hard to imagine just who I know that I am. And I think that's why it just took me so long to be finally able to say, yeah, I did that. And before Detective Flores, even before you were arrested, did you call Detective Flores? Did you start calling him? I did. And were you here when we listened to those phone calls of you talking to him? Yes. What do you think of yourself when you listen to yourself in those phone calls? Again, just how stupid I was. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't intentionally. It wasn't even a thought of mine to call him at first. I didn't even realize it was an option. My friend Leslie in Utah called me and told me that there were a lot of people in Utah saying things about me after Travis was found, and she believed in my innocence, and she urged me to call him and clear this up and straighten it out. And I thought, oh, maybe I should do that. Did you do that then? Is that one of the reasons you called? That was my more attempt to cover up what I had done. We also heard that you sent flowers to Mr. Alexander's grandmother. Did you ever meet with Mr. Alexander's grandmother? Yes, I met her on 3 occasions. Did you send flowers to her after you killed Mr. Alexander? I did. Why would you do that? Was that some kind of a plan to make her hurt more? No, definitely not. Why? She was the only family member that I knew and I had ever met, and thinking about her and the pain she was going through, I didn't know what to do. Like, it seemed to me more insensitive to not reach out to her at all. I realize now I'm 6 years removed from that, and I see how insensitive that was. But at the time, I just felt like if I do nothing, that it's worse. I didn't know what to do. I just did that. What about, did you go to his memorial? Mr. Alexander's memorial? Yes. Why would you do that? Again, the memorial, separate from the funeral, the memorial was where a bunch of friends gathered, and these were all people that I knew were close to Travis. And since I was in this mode of trying to cover up and trying to act like I had nothing to do with that, I knew that by not showing up, it would look more suspicious. So I showed up and I tried to act as normal as I could. You were obviously here when Dr. Horn testified. Yes. And did you see the pictures? Yes. You saw the pictures of the way Mr. Alexander was found? Yes. I'm showing you Exhibit 683. Do you recognize that photo? Yes. Why do you recognize that photo? I took it. I took it in the loft of his house. And when you saw it being played this morning, what goes through your mind when you see this photo? That was nearly a year before he died, and I think back on that time, and I can't believe that things ended up the way they did. My mind freezes up when I think back on that. There was a whole series of photos that he was playing with his dog. I remember that clearly. I was sitting on the love sack. Does that remind you of good times that you had with Mr. Alexander? Yes, it takes me right back to that day. It was a difficult time during our relationship, but that was a good day. And when you see the pictures that were taken after he died, and you see a number of stab wounds that were there, how do you feel when you see that? Again, I think that this is somebody that I cared about, and I caused that pain, and those were his last moments, and it makes me sick. And I wish so badly that I could just do that whole day over. When you look at those pictures, do you ever think about, is it something that you thought you would have ever done? No. Why not? As I was saying, my whole life I considered myself somebody I know who I am. I know who I was, and I did that. And that is not who I am, but I did that, and I can't. It is so hard to reconcile the two because I just can't. It's so hard to believe that I did do that, and it is hard. I wish so much that day never happened. Jodi, I want to talk to you a little bit about who you were, okay? You have been telling us that you know who you were. So let's talk a little bit about who that was, okay? Tell me where you were born. I was born in Salinas, California. And when were you born? July 9th, 1980. So what does that make you, 34 now? Yes. And were you just about almost 28 when you were 27 when you killed Mr. Alexander? Yes. Who are your parents? My parents' names are Bill and Sandy Arias. And where do they live? Are they married? They are. Where do they live? They are living in Eureka. My mom is living here during the trial, and my dad, is that in California? Yes. Do you have any grandparents who are living? Yes, I have 2. Both of my grandmothers are living. And where do they live? My maternal grandmother lives in Eureka also. My dad's mom lives in Idaho. I want to talk to you a little bit about your siblings. Do you have siblings? Yes. Where are you? And where are you in the line of siblings? I have an older half-sister from my dad's previous marriage. She's 5 years older than me, and I'm the first of my parents. And do you have a younger sibling then? I do. I have 3 younger siblings. Who is that? Who is the first one? My brother Carl came 2 years after I did, and my sister Angela was born when I was 11, and my youngest brother Joseph, Joey, he was born when I was 13. Is there quite a bit of difference between you and Joey and Angela? Yes, 11 to 13 years. Did you have time when you were growing up did you spend time with your brother Carl? Yes, we played a lot. Judge, may I approach? Yes. Miss Arias, I'm showing you Exhibit 668. Do you recognize that? Yes, I do. Is that a picture of you and your brother? Yes. Judge, I would like to move for admission of 668. Any objection? No. It's admitted. Is this a picture of you and your brother? Yes. What kind of things? You said you were born in Salinas. Did you live there for a while? Yes. How long? Until I was like a month from turning 12. I was 11, but almost 12. So most of your time in Salinas, was that spent with you and your younger brother Carl? Yes. Tell us a little bit about what life was like in Salinas. What kind of things did you do? In Salinas, when I was younger, my brother and I played. This house was in a cul-de-sac. We had friends in the cul-de-sac. We played a lot. We rode bikes. We roller skated. We went on trips. We had a huge backyard. We had pets. And is this a picture of when? Did you use to build forts in your living room and things like that? We did. Where he took furniture and blankets and played all day. That was probably on Saturday morning when we weren't in school. At that point in time in your life, were you close with your brother Carl? Yes. Were you close with your mom and dad? Yes. Judge, may I approach? You may. Is that a picture? I'm showing you Exhibit 689. Is this another picture of you and Carl? I'm sorry, you and your brother? Yes. Is that picture then, Jodi, of you and your younger brother? Yes. Do you have fond memories of your early years in Salinas with your younger brother? I do. Is this a picture of something that evokes those types of memories in you? Yes. In Salinas, was there a time when your memories change as far as positive memories of your childhood? There is, yes. When is that? It wasn't one defining moment, but around age 7, things began to change in my household. Tell me what changed. My parents' discipline grew a lot. I'm sorry, I can barely hear you. I'm sorry, my parents, their discipline became more severe. In what way did it become more severe? Well, my mom began to carry a wooden spoon around in her purse, and wherever we were, whether it was at home or out somewhere, if we were misbehaving, she would pull it out and whack us with it. My dad began to use a belt on my brother and I. Emotionally, my mother became a little bit more distant at that point, a little bit more, I hate to say it, meaner, but it was meaner. I didn't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say. I don't know how to say it. Tell us a little bit about, you said your mom had a wooden spoon? She did. Did she hit both you and Carl? Yes. She actually broke it on Carl one time. Do you have a specific memory of being hit with that spoon? Yeah, I do. Several. Do you remember what you felt or how it made you feel when your mother hit you? Yes, physically it is extremely painful. My skin welts up, but emotionally it made me angry. Why did it make you angry? Well, she's my mom, and I love my mom, and my mom says she loves me, and I understand I'm not a perfect child, and I may be misbehaving, but here she is whacking the hell out of me, and it hurts so bad. Sometimes, we squirm when we're getting hit because we don't like to get hit. When we would squirm, she would give up on hitting our butts, and she would hit us anywhere she could land it. That hurt. Did that hurt physically? It hurt physically, and it made me mad at her, pretty bad. And other than being mad, did it hurt you emotionally? Yeah, it hurt me emotionally as well because she's my mom. She's this person in my life who has been loving and nurturing my whole life, and it wasn't overnight, but she just began to get angrier and more severe in the way she disciplined us. And what was happening then at this point in time? When your parents started getting into this type of beating? What happened with your relationship with your parents? Well, I think that there was a wedge growing between us, especially my mom and I. There was this wedge that was starting, and it was growing a little bit more every time. My dad and I sort of became, there was a wedge as well. It grew a little bit and I became a little bit closer to my teen years. As I became a little bit closer to my teen years. Were you close to your dad when you were younger? As close to your dad as you were with your mom? When I was very young, I remember at 2 years old, he would bounce me on his knee and kiss me, and his face was scratchy, and he would tell me, I love you to pieces. He would always say that. He used to say that a lot to me. Did that change as well after you were 7 and after the discipline started turning into beatings? Yeah, my dad worked a lot, so he wasn't around much. He was in the household, but he was gone a lot. He was gone a lot of the day, so we weren't as close anymore. And you said that your father, did he use a belt for his discipline? Yes. And did he use that belt on you? Yes. And did he use it on Carl? Yes. What about as far as his voice? Did he ever raise his voice to you or things like that? Oh, yeah. He would scream pretty loudly in my face, like his spittle would get on me. He was screaming so forcefully. And do you have specific memories of that? I do. So you said you lived in Salinas up until about age 11, right before you turned 12, right? Right. Where did you go after Salinas? We moved to Santa Maria, California, and in Santa Maria, what grade were you going into? I was going into 6th grade, and Carl was going into 5th grade. Okay. Did you obviously have to start over in a new house? A new school? Yes, we did. And how was that going into a new school in 6th grade? Well, when my parents first announced we were moving, it was awful. I was very sad. I had a lot of friends in Salinas, and it was scary going to a new school because people I didn't know. Were you able to make friends? Yes, I did. And did you spend your middle school years in Santa Maria? I did, yes. And is that until 8th grade? Yes. What was happening between your mom and dad at the time as far as your household is concerned? How was their relationship what were you viewing? Well, my dad could be very complimentary toward my mom and very loving towards her, but at the same time, he could also be very critical and say demeaning things towards her. Did you see your dad do that towards your mom? I did. Did you see your dad demean her in front of you? Yeah, he mostly would demean her about her weight. Okay, was that something he used to pick on her about? He did. And what did you see as far as how your mom handled that? What did she do? She didn't really say anything. She wouldn't cower, but she would just not say much. Sometimes she would. My dad put a picture of her on the refrigerator when she was thinner, so every time she would go to the refrigerator, she would see that. And she would take it down, and he would put it back up, and she would take it down, and he would put it back up. She tried to avoid it. She didn't really tell him to knock it off. Did you ever see her stand up to him? Nothing stands out in my mind. Did you ever see her be assertive to him and tell him directly to his face to stop it? I think I remember her saying that a few times, but how did that go? He didn't listen to her. All right, and your parents still married today? Yes. And has your mom stayed loyal to your dad? Yes, they are very loyal to each other. Were you ever aware of your parents ever being involved with drugs? Yes. When was that? When I was 4, I have a distinct memory of going into my parents' bedroom. I didn't know what it was at the time. There was a mirror with a white powder and a razor. So now I realize what that was, and it probably was also when I was 5. My uncle, my dad's brother, got married, and my dad was in the wedding, and I was in the wedding, and he brought cocaine to the wedding as part of the party. Other than that, did you know of anything else with them being or using drugs? I have learned since then my mom smoked pot on the day I was born prior to giving birth to me. She may have done it more throughout her pregnancy, but I'm not aware of that. Is that something you more recently learned? Yes. That was something she didn't want to share with you before? Objection, speculation, lack of foundation. Sustained. Is that something she didn't share with you before? No. Let's talk a little bit about Santa Maria then. You said you spent your middle years, school years there? Yes. And how were you adjusting in school? In a new school? Well, 6th grade was still part of the elementary school. I adjusted. I made friends, and then I went to a new school for middle school, which was a little bit more difficult because we moved that summer. So I went to a new school district. It was right next door. I had to make new friends again at school, but I did. What kind of interest did you have when you were in middle school? Did you have any kind of things that were special to you? Yeah? Tell us what that was. I became interested in art very early on. I took art class at school. When I was younger, I wanted to learn Spanish. I couldn't wait to get to high school to take Spanish. In 8th grade, they offered it as an elective. So I was really excited to take that, so I did. So were those two things that were special to you? They were. And what kind of grades were you getting in middle school? Mostly A's and B's for the most part until the last semester of 8th grade. Was there a problem your last semester of 8th grade? Yeah. What was that? There were a few problems. Well, let's start with your family. What was your home life like at that point? Well, it wasn't as warm anymore. My mom, well, my little brother and sister were born, and I was close to them. My brother was doing his own thing. We weren't really hanging out anymore. My mom was working full-time. My dad was working full-time. I was babysitting a lot. Jodi, who were you babysitting? My little brother and sister, if they were home. The focus was on the babies. We weren't really having dinner anymore or hanging out or going to the movies, things we had done when we were little. Could you tell a difference in your household as far as your family dynamic was working? Could I tell the difference? Yes, from the time you were a little girl. Yes, I could see a difference. Was it getting any better than it was, or was it getting worse? It wasn't getting better. It was kind of sliding as far as just quality, generally quality of our relationship we have in the family. What? Do I smell cleaner or something? Did you use any cleaner or something? Oh, maybe, I don't know. Okay. Sorry. What was going on as far as the discipline was concerned? Were your parents still disciplining you? Yes. Was your mom still hitting you? She was. What about your dad? He was still aggressive. He wasn't using the belt so much, but he began to shove me into furniture and scream and yell and things like that. Continued screaming and yelling at you? Yes. Was your home something that was calm and serene, or was it more chaotic? With you, we were talking about some of the problems by the end of 8th grade. So your family dynamic, that's what we're talking about. Was there another problem? I think so, yes. Did you meet friends? Did you have a particular friend who you think was helping you along with your problems? Kind of. I met somebody, a girl that we were hanging out with, a few girls actually, and she introduced me to marijuana, so I started smoking that. And about how long did you do that for? 5 months in 8th grade, January through May pretty much. And so that was the end of your semester, end of 8th grade, right? Yes, right. Were you able to, did you stop on your own? I did. And did you ever get arrested for that or anything like that? No. Did you ever have any kind of criminal charges or ever have to go to juvenile hall? No. After 8th grade, did you move again? Yes. Where did you guys move? My entire family, the immediate family, we went up north to Eureka. This is Eureka, California? Yes. Tell us where Eureka is in comparison to Santa Maria and Salinas. Salinas is about 2 hours south of San Francisco, about 20 miles inland. Santa Maria, I don't know miles like miles, but it's about 3.5 hours south of Salinas. I think Santa Maria to Salinas is roughly 600-700 miles. It's a 15 minutes from the border. Eureka, you mean? Eureka? Santa Maria to Eureka is very far? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, it's an all-day drive. Did you mean to say Eureka is 15 minutes from the Oregon border? That's what I meant to say if I didn't. When you say your entire immediate family, who is that? My 3 younger siblings and my parents and myself. Did anyone else live in Eureka at the time? Any other family? Yes, almost all of my mom's immediate family, all of her siblings and her parents were either in Eureka or in the area. So in Eureka, did you start high school there? Yes. So you were starting into a new school? Yes. How did that go? What did you think of the high school? I liked the school. It was smaller. Well, at first, as a teenager, I hated being in Eureka. It was a small town. There wasn't a lot to do. My mom went to high school there, and my grandfather went to high school there. They all knew people. So a former friend of hers from high school had a daughter my age, a daughter going into her senior year, and so I had a friend, and so you had some comfort. So you had someone to kind of, right, a few people to know when you got there. Yes. All right, tell me a little bit about your home life once you moved to Eureka. What was going on at home? At home, it just seemed to slide even more. Home life was kind of dark. It was cold. We weren't hugging. We weren't saying, I love you. We weren't even talking. What was the relationship between you and your mother at that point? It was quite distant at that point. It was, we didn't get along. I love her, of course. I love her, but it was painful because we just didn't mix. Did you see other friends with their moms? Yeah, I did. And did you see some of your friends have good relationships with their mothers? Yeah, some of them, like, they were close, they were loving. I want to say, like, friends, but it was still parental-child relationship, but they were close. How'd that make you feel? It was confusing to me because I would look at them and say, how can you guys get along like that? My mom and I don't get along at all. I envy it, but at the same time, it was like foreign when I would see that. That type of relationship was foreign to you? Yes. And what about as far as working? So when you start high school, how old are you? I'm 15. And you are working at this time? Yes. Actually, did you start working in Santa Maria when you lived in Santa Maria? I did. Let's go back for a second. What did you do in Santa Maria? I worked at my dad's restaurant. I was a hostess. And how old were you when you started working for your dad? I was 13 or 14. I think I was 13. Okay. I think. And did you do that the whole time? Once you started 13, did you keep working as a hostess until you moved to Eureka? Yes, until I moved to Eureka, yes. All right. And when you moved to Eureka, we're talking about your home life. What about jobs? Did you have a job in Eureka? I did. What did you do? I also worked at my dad's restaurant. And what did you do there? When I started working at that restaurant, I was waiting tables. Which restaurant is that? It was called the Claim Jumpers Family Restaurants. Is that Claim Jumper like a chain? No, it's not part of that chain. Is that something that your family owned? Yes. What did you do? So you were getting paid, obviously. Yes. What did you do with that money? I saved it. For what? Mostly I bought little things here and there. For what? For a car. You were saving for a car? Yes. In high school, what kinds of interests did you have? I mean, you told us about Spanish and art in middle school. What about high school? What were you doing then? Those interests continued. I was interested in a lot of subjects. The only thing I didn't like was math, but I liked school. I liked being in school. I liked the classroom. I liked the teachers, the students, the setting, the learning. Art and Spanish were my favorite. Did you have any particular teachers that made an impact on you? Yes, my art teacher, Mr. Rangel, made an impact on me. How did he do that? I think he saw my talent, and he recognized that, and he praised my art. Was he supportive of you? Yes. Did he encourage you? Yes, he did. And were you getting any type of support or encouragement at home like that? No, not that kind at all. Did your parents support your love for art at that point? Did they do anything to help you? Not at this point, no. What kind of grades were you getting in the beginning of high school? In the beginning, I was getting A's and B's mostly. I wasn't 4.0, but I was in the high 3 point whatever grade range. And you said you enjoyed the school? I did. Yeah, I really liked school. Was school different than when you went home from school every day? Was there a difference between your home and your school and the type of atmosphere? Yeah, it was like night and day, really. I would go home, and it was not a conducive environment for, say, doing homework or just having a place to study or be successful, that kind of thing. At school, we were all supported that way in learning and just being successful. That's how the teachers are. At this point in high school, how were you and your mom and dad getting along? What did you see? Kind of the same thing. He would berate her, but he was also complimentary towards her. It was kind of a strange paradox. If there was a pretty woman on TV and we were watching, he would say, well, she is not as pretty as your mom in her presence. And other times he would say things that were very degrading towards her. So this type of relationship between the two of them continued? Yes. And was your mom's reactions the same as before? Yes. What did she do? Almost like a non-reaction, just kind of quiet, didn't say anything, not much. She didn't stand up to him? No, she didn't. And your dad at that time, let's talk about your dad for a second. Was he, in your mind, growing up with him, was he an imposing figure? Yes, he was. In what way? He was huge. He was a bodybuilder. He had huge biceps, huge shoulders. He was tall to me. He was 5'11". He is tall, but growing up, he seemed huge. And what kind of discipline was going on in your house during high school? Was your mom still hitting you with the wooden spoon? No. By that time, she had broken on my brother. Sometimes she would smack me with a hairbrush. My brother got it with the wire hanger a few times. Sometimes she would use a belt. And at a certain point, were you getting old enough that you were trying to stop her? Yeah, I was trying to. Well, there were a few times that I would try to grab her hands and prevent her from hitting me. Was it kind of getting different from when you were smaller to the sense that you were able to try to do something about it? Right. I mean, it was a bad idea because there would be repercussions, but you can't help it. When you're being attacked, you kind of grab, you know? What about, you told us about art. Were you still interested in Spanish? Yes. Did you take Spanish in high school? I did. You said you were working for your dad? Yes. So when would you get home? When you were taking care of Angela and Joey still? I was occasionally, yeah, I would babysit. How did you do all of that? The school, work, and caring for your brother and sister. Well, school was not the number one priority in the house. More, it was the chores, you know. Contributing. If I went to sleep at night before I did the dishes and it was my turn to do the dishes, I went to school without that. And I went to school without that. Instead of being able to do my schoolwork, I had to drop everything. Go get that done first. And then, if you want to do whatever you want to do, you can do that. Those kind of things. Maybe I was just slacking off as a teenager, but there wasn't a lot of encouragement as far as just focus on your schoolwork and do your work kind of thing. Did you say there was not? There was not. There was no emphasis there? You said when you were working that you were saving money? Yes. Okay, what types of things did you save your money for? I know you told us a car. Right. Is that one of the things? Yes. Did you buy your own car? I did. Is that all with your own money? Yes. Did you care for your car all by yourself? Yes. And how did you do that? I continued to work. At one point it broke down. My dad helped me, but mostly I paid the gas, I paid the insurance, I paid for the car itself, and I just continued working and making a little bit of money, and it was a slow town, but that's how I did it. What about Was there ever in high school, with your interest in Spanish, did you ever get to go anywhere with your Spanish class? Yes. Where? We went to Costa Rica. How was it that that happened? Well, my sophomore year in September, at the beginning of the year, there were flyers up advertising for an exchange program, and it was only a 3-week deal in the summer. So I saw it as something I could do. So I decided I was going to do it. You decided you were going to do it? Yes. How is that you did it? I just came home. My parents were vegging on the couch, and I told them I'm going to Costa Rica this next summer. And they looked at me and didn't argue. Did they help you at all? A little bit. Yes, they did. And did you save money for that? Yes. And did you pay for most of that trip yourself? I did. Is that something that the students had to do? No one was paying for the students. It was on them and their families that came up with the money to go. You said it was a 3-week trip? Yes. And when was this? That would have been the summer of 1997. So summer 1997, when you were 17, is that right? Right. Well, I turned 17 in Costa Rica. Okay, you turned 17. Okay, so summer, you were 17, so you're heading into junior year. Okay. Yes. Tell us at this point, is your family life getting any better? No, it's getting worse. How is it getting worse? My relationship with my dad was getting more hostile, I guess. He was getting a little bit... It did not increase in frequency, but it increased in severity. Tell me what you mean by an increased in severity. He was yelling and angry, and I remember getting shoved into the piano. And one day I was shoved into a door frame, and I hit my head on the side of the door, and I passed out. Sorry, tell me what happened when you got hit into the door frame? I lost consciousness briefly, and I slid down the wall. What was going on? Were you arguing with someone? Yeah, I was arguing with my mom. I don't remember why, but she started trying to hit me. I don't remember with what, and I grabbed her hands, and we locked hands like this. And then she was digging her acrylic nails into my skin, and it hurt, and my dad got involved. He got up, and what did your dad do? You said your dad got involved. What did he do? He got up from the chair he was sitting in, and he came over, and somehow I guess he separated us, and, well, he didn't throw me, but he shoved me into the door frame. All right, and your head hit the door frame. Is that what you remember? Yes. And you said you lost consciousness? Yes. What happened when you woke up, or when you... I'm sure it was brief, because the next thing I knew, I remember being slumped over like on the floor, and my mom was holding my chin up. What was your mom doing when she was holding your chin up? She was continuing to yell at me, whatever she was. Did you hear her say anything to your dad? Yeah, I did. I heard her say, "Be careful, Bill." How did that make you feel when you get to this point of supposed discipline with your family? I was stunned because my dad had never done, it was reaching a level of dangerousness that it had never reached before. So it was, I don't know, it was just sort of odd to me, because even though things there had been a violent kind of level, how did it make you, how did it make you feel inside, as far as the way your mom, or your mom and dad, did your mom and dad get upset? Did your mom get upset with your dad for doing that? She didn't really seem to. No, she didn't. How did that make you feel? Well, it drives the wedge even further between my father and I. I felt more distance than ever between my parents. I just didn't feel like we were a family. We were a family, but we weren't acting that way. There was no warm feelings between us. There was no ill will, but I said, there was no hugging. There was no I love you. It just became worse and more distant and more cold, and it just felt a little bit darker in the house. And did there come a point in time when you said, this was going into your junior year, right? It was in my junior year when this occurred. I believe it was after the new year, I think. After the new year, before the new year, that first semester, and the first 2 years of school in high school, what kind of grades were you getting? How were you doing? I remember getting A's and B's, I think, yeah. And there was a big difference after that particular incident? Was there a big difference? Yes. What was the difference? The grades began to slide. I was taking advanced placement college classes, so the workload was higher, but the home environment was not conducive to that, and the relationship with my parents was sliding. I didn't have a relationship with my brother anymore. You're talking about your brother Carl? Yes, Carl. And it just became, my grades began to slide and I really wasn't making it. After junior year, did you finish your junior year? Not really. I guess I finished with D's and F's and almost no attendance towards the end. Did you go back to school for your senior year? Nope. I turned 18 that summer and I stayed in the workforce. So you just kept working? Yes. Now at the time in your junior year, you were in your junior year, yes. Were you? Yes. Who was it that you were dating? When I first started my junior year, I was dating a guy named Victor. I broke up with him sometime in the fall, not too long. Let me take you back before Victor. Someone you met in Costa Rica, right? Yes. Let's talk about that. Just a little bit. Okay. So you met someone named Bobby Juarez? Yes. How old were you when you met him? 15. Did you date him a little bit? Not initially. We were just friends. Then eventually, I met him in the summer, and I think by the new year or slightly after the new year, sometime in January, we decided to be boyfriend and girlfriend. How old were you when this happened, when you decided to be boyfriend and girlfriend? I was still 15. How old was Mr. Juarez? He was 18. So he was in school with you? No, he was out of school. How long did that last? I don't recall, but it didn't last until the school year. It didn't last very long. What happened? He was getting very serious, and so I felt it was a little bit heavy. He was saying, I love you, and he wanted to spend forever with me, and that sort of thing. It just seemed a bit intense and serious, and so I broke up with him. So you broke up with him, is that what you said? Yes. Jodi, I'm showing you what has been marked as 691 and 690. Do you recognize these? I do. Is one a family picture and one a picture of Mr. Juarez? Yes. Judge, I move for the admission of 691 and 690. Lack of foundation. Dates. Objection. Sustained. With regard to the family picture that I showed you, which is Exhibit 690, do you remember around what time that was taken? If I could look at it one more time. Do you want to see it again? I could probably let you know. Okay. It looks like it would have to be around 95. Judge, she keeps trailing off, and I'm having difficulty hearing her. I want to know if perhaps we can... I'm sorry, I don't know the exact date, but I believe it was the mid-90s. Are you a teenager in this picture? Yes. So, is this a picture of your immediate family? Yes. When you're a teenager? Yes. And that's obvious to you at the top? Yes. Is that your brother Carl to the left? Yes. And your mom to the right? Yes. And then Joey and Angela. Oh, Angela. Yes. And obviously your dad? Yes. This is at the time you say you were a teenager at this point? Yes. We were talking about when you first met Mr. Juarez, and you said that you dated him just a few months, right? Initially, yes. And then you said you went to Costa Rica in high school. No, right after. Well, yeah, in high school, but it was in the summer. Right, the summer that you turned 17? Yes. So the summer that you turned 17, did you meet anyone when you went to Costa Rica? Yes. Who did you meet? I stayed with a family there, an exchange family, and one of the family members was a guy named Victor who was about my age. What was Victor's last name? His last name was Arias, but there was no relation? No, a different Arias family. And from after meeting him in Costa Rica, were you dating him? Yeah, you could say that. How did that work out? Because he lived in Costa Rica. Right. How did that work out? Well, he and I hung out and we saw the tourist attractions in Costa Rica, and I left, I think, in July, and then he came to visit in the United States in August, and he stayed in Redding, California, and then he came to Eureka, and he stayed there for a few weeks, and we kept in touch mostly via letters and sometimes phone calls. So you said you kept in touch mostly phone calls and letters? Mostly letters and sometimes phone calls, right. And did you say that he came to the United States once? Yeah, once that I know of. He has been there more than once. You saw him once in the USA? Yes. And in other words, did he visit with you when he came to the US? Yes. And at some point in time, did this relationship last very long? I wouldn't say so long. No. What happened? And what happened to it? Well, it got to a point. I mean, he was a nice guy. He was good looking, but we argued a lot. He didn't like me to, he didn't like for me to talk to other people. How do I say? He was kind of possessive, and it was just not my thing. And at this point, you were only 17? Yes. And obviously the relationship broke up, right? Right. Who did the breaking up? I broke up with him. How did you? Yeah, I called him. And I broke up with him. Obviously that was over the phone then? Yeah, it was over the phone. Are you kind of wincing when you say that, called him to break up? Was that something difficult? Yes, it just seems like kind of messed up to break up with someone on the phone. I mean, it's something that I know he loved me. It was difficult. I heard him crying on the other end of the line, and I felt like at least I owed it to him to break up to him to his face, but we were in different countries, so. Is that something you're still able to do, break up with him? Yes. After you broke up with Victor Arias, did you end up meeting, or had you been friends with Mr. Juarez after you broke up? Yeah, we reconnected and were talking for a while, and at that point, you were dating Victor, and you had been friends with Mr. Juarez again, right? Yes, and Mr. Juarez, where did he live? He lived in Montauk. That's a town outside of Eureka. It's fairly close to Eureka. It's about 6 miles away. At a certain point, did that relationship turn into dating again? Yes, several months later it did. Several months from when? From the time I guess I broke up with Victor. Do you remember time-wise when that was? I don't remember exactly the date I broke up with Victor, but it was the fall, and Bobby and I began dating on the 1st of the new year. So when we are talking about fall and the 1st of the new year, is that the 1st of the new year, is that in the middle of your junior year? Yeah, that would be 1988. All right, so you began dating Mr. Suarez again at that time that we have discussed. I think they have a typo there. That should be 1998. And your family life and your grades started to slide. Is that all the same? Right, all in. I had a lot going on that year. And you remember I showed you the exhibit number 691, a picture of you and Mr. Juarez? Right. And about when was that taken? I think that was when I was 19, probably 1999, but it may have been 18. I may have been, yeah. Was it taken sometime after you had started dating again? Yes. Okay. Is this a picture of you and Mr. Suarez? Yes. At the time that things were happening in your house, when you talked about your junior year and how things were starting to slide, was there a certain point in time when you decided that you had enough? Yes. At home? Yes. What happened? Well, things had just gotten to a point where I didn't want to live there anymore. Bobby and I began to make plans to move south this winter made plans to move in with him and his parents and grandparents. I'm thinking of moving south this winter. That's what I think. Okay. When you say parents and grandparents, what do you mean? They were an elderly couple. I believe they were his grandparents, like biologically, but he called them mom and dad. You and Bobby started making plans for you to move in with him? Yes. You're still in high school at this point? Yes. How did you effectuate those plans? What were you doing? Well, little by little, I began to pack up some things that I had and whatever, and I was visiting. I would take them over to his house, and I had a shed in the back, and he would put all my things there. I had dishes and things that my dad had given me when he closed the restaurant this year, household stuff, my books, things like that. At this point in time, this is the end of your junior year, right? Yes. Are you still working? I am, yes. Where are you working? Well, I wasn't working at my dad's restaurant. I began to work at restaurants were my thing. So I worked at a restaurant either called Grandma's House as a hostess or Purple Plum as a busser, or maybe it was both. I can't remember. It was all in that similar. All around that time, the same time? Right. Okay. So you were obviously earning money then, yes. So what happened then? At some point you actually leave your house? Yes. What happens? Well, at that point I stayed up all night packing, and tell me what point that is. Well, this is about 3 months before I was 18. So you would have turned 18 in July of 1988? 98. Sorry. I would have turned 18 that July. So roughly April. I think it was sometime in the spring. I packed up all my things all night long, and I picked up a cat, and I walked out the door around 7 in the morning and drove everything out to his house and dropped everything out there. When you walked out the door, were your parents there? My mom was in the kitchen. Did anyone say anything? You could see the front door from the kitchen, and she saw me with my cat, and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Nothing." And I just shut the door, and I took off in my car, and then I called her. You went over to Bobby's? Yes. Did you call your mom later? I called her when I got there that morning, just so they were aware of what I was doing at that point. Is that when you told them that you were moving out? Yes. Did they do anything to stop you? No. Did they come over to Bobby's house and pack your things to make you come back? No. Did they ever try to convince you not to come back? Okay, where was I? Gosh, I was just having a Seavers moment. Okay, let me see how much more there's a lot more than, let me see, is that the end of that, or is there a lot more? There's a lot more, so we're gonna have to stop there because I was having like a Seavers moment, like I was falling asleep. So, that was scary. So, let me see, let me come back here. But, hey, Austin, Danny's iPhone. So we can continue that tomorrow, but I am exhausted. I have to go to sleep because I'm falling asleep. But I hope that's let me take a poll real quick so I know where you guys stand with this. Okay, there's your poll. It should go there, yeah. Okay, I'm glad you like it. Let's see. Okay. All right, well, I will talk to you guys tomorrow. And stay well. God bless. Prayers for all. And I am going right to bed. I had that moment where I was like falling asleep. Oh, thank you, Taco. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I had that. It was weird. I was sitting there. I was sitting. I guess I fell asleep for a minute. I thought I was going to fall out of the chair. I'm like, what the frick? And it just reminded me of Seavers. Okay. So, all right. See you guys tomorrow. Hi, Leslie Romani. How are everybody? Hey, Nicole Griffith. Thank you. Oh, and yeah, I just wanted to make one little announcement. I didn't get to get anybody's invoices out. I'm going to do that tomorrow. So the stuff will be mailed either tomorrow, or we're going to take the invoices out tomorrow or Tuesday, okay? All right. And everybody take care. Everybody that I missed. Hi, Puddin', everybody. I'll talk to you later. Hi, Angie Wallace. All right. Good night, everybody. Have a great night. Morning. Morning, night, whatever. Bye, everybody. Let me see here. How do I get out of here? I'm figuring out. Oh, this way.